podcast, and they were like, "You have a podcast?"
Wow.
Oh man, see, I want to be visited by the FBI. I know that it's
Yeah,
kind of like a badge of honor. I know.
If I open my door and they're there, I'm like, this is like a next step for me. Thank you. I'll
Yeah.
be shaking hands. Thank you. Come in. Would you like some coffee?
I was 26 or 27 when I found out about my FBI file.
Wow.
Oh, nice. So
I don't know what it says. I don't know what's in it. I just know it exists because a friend of mine got a hold of his FBI file and mine was referenced in it.
Nice.
Wow.
See,
Dude, I wonder if I have an FBI file.
Oh, you're a Muslim communist. You absolutely have a FBI file. I'm
drinking beer.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just a regular white guy who I don't know. I assume I have one, but I don't know. That'd be cool. I'd love to be able to see that sometime. Because Islamic Socialist was on. We had him on a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about the same thing. Like he had got it wind that he had a file, and that was just cool.
Many years before I rebranded as a communist, I hung out with quite a sketchy group of folks who were, I would say, more inclined to end up with an FBI file, ALF and ELF types.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not following the acronyms.
Oh, Animal Liberation Front and Earth Liberation Front.
Yeah, like the eco-terrorists. Not, I mean, quote unquote eco-terrorists. Not depending on your point of view. Just the people that are like pretty extreme about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Goddamn tree huggers.
I would argue either perspective would consider them terrorists. It's just a matter of which side views it as positive and which side views that as negative.
Fair enough. Yeah, that was kind of a knee-jerk thing to say terrorists. So I should check myself, but yeah,
you're good. You're not gonna bother me within reason.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Well, I guess we should back it up a little bit and pretend this is like a real interview or a real episode, and do it kind of informally interview style. How long have you been doing your podcast, Cars and Comrades?
I'm not even. I think shy of 3 years.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I am fascinated by cars. I would love to like. I never like grew up with a dad, and I blame me not having any knowledge of cars on that. But like, I would love to like work on a car. It is my dream to like restore a classic like car eventually. That's a kind of a different, I assume different like wheelhouse, like or adjacent. But like, I'm just waiting to be rich one day, and then I'll be like, okay, cool. I'll buy like a rusty Chevelle or something, and then kind of slowly piece it back together, or it's like
I'll walk you through it, man. Just to give you an idea of the budget that you can work with, I have a van that's being built to drag race. There's like weird circumstances around it, so it's like 500 miles away at my buddy's property. But the long and the short of it is, I found the van body that I really wanted. It had paperwork, but it had no engine, transmission. It needed a fuck ton of work. Yeah. And so my goal, and not that I've quite achieved it yet, but my goal was to have a van that would run like sub 12 seconds in the quarter mile for under $5,000.
Wow.
And it's possible to hit both those targets?
I am currently my next big expense is probably going to be wiring it, but I have the van, the engine, the transmission, the rear end, and just an absolute fuck ton of parts. And I'd have to sit down and figure it out, but I'm around $3,500 into it, and that's with a bunch of like performance speed parts.
Yeah.
Like even my engine's out of a junkyard, but it's going to be tuned up to be about 500 horsepower, which for the weight of the van should put me in the 11-second range. So like if you're willing to do the work, and like also I don't know how old you guys are. I had never turned a wrench on a car till I was like 30 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I've done minor maintenance. I've like replaced my own serpentine belts, and I've done my own oil changes a couple times. I'm not, I've replaced brake pads, kind of general wear and tear maintenance. I'm not like totally,
I was.
Yeah, but I'm 35 now, so I've done very little maintenance at 35 years old. But all my cars have been automatic. All my cars have just been kind of take them to the dealership whenever it's time to do maintenance. I've never like really worked on anything older than, I guess I had an 88 Ford Taurus when I was like in high school, so that was pretty cool. But they had
from my 4 best friends in high school, 2 of them are professional mechanics. So I grew up around cars.
Okay.
I even have a 86 GTI right now. I love old European cars, but like it's just been sitting there. It runs and drives, but like I don't have time to fix the interior. The headliner fell off. I replaced it. Doesn't look good. It's falling off because the glue just melted as the heat came in. So I had an 88 Volkswagen Fox. I drove manual most of my life.
My thing isn't so much like cars. It's specifically just I like building stuff. Like I have a wood shop in my garage, and I like just building things. I'm in the middle of building like a steel frame, like 1980s, like bicycle right now. I just like building stuff. I would like to build a car, but that's like a whole like level up in terms of like the commitment and the space and the time and the money it takes to do that. So it's like the same principles just for me is like, oh, I'd like to do that's like kind of the final boss of just like
Final
tinkering.
boss.
It's the tinkerer's final boss, but it's like it's just such a commitment. So it's something I definitely want to do. I watched all the shows about like whatever those shows are on Netflix about rebuilding, remodeling cars and stuff, and like restoring old rusted out cars. And so like I'm interested in it, but maybe it was
the biggest hurdle is I bought all of my cars before the pandemic, and that was like when prices got just cuckoo bananas. So I don't really shop around for stuff anymore.
Yeah, I feel that pain as a woodworker. Like the price of just like simple plywood and just basic lumber, like shot up like tenfold. And
I feel like you and I are gonna get along. I'm just gonna keep fucking with you every time you say something. So just so you know, I have probably $10,000, maybe $12,000 worth of exotic lumber in my attic.
Oh, that's
exotic lumber.
Oh yeah.
I have probably over 100 pounds of Amboina burl. I have.
That's sick,
dude.
I'm a wood nerd for sure. Ooh, what is that?
Ebony.
Ebony, okay.
Ooh.
Yeah. I like cool exotic wood. There's a place just up the road called what's it called? Rocklers? Rock. So it's like a fine wood crafting shop, and they have a bunch of exotic woods, and I just go like feel them and smell them, and can't really afford them, but I like to touch them. So I definitely get it. I get it.
I used to do turning for a living. And yeah, I have more lumber than the Rockler or like Woodcraft or any of those places around here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a chain, right? Rockler?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I started off just kind of going to Lowe's and buying, lumber at Lowe's, but then I kind of realized like that lumber is shit if you actually want to do anything better than just building like a simple planter box or whatever. So as I kind of upped my game, I needed to like hone it. And then I don't know, around COVID, I was like, it was kind of the perfect time to really get into something like that. At the same time, it was the worst possible time to do that because of the price of lumber. Like I had plans and like I was building this poker table, and I was like, building this nice like 10-seater poker table. I had like upholstery and like the felt and just all this stuff. And then the price of the plywood sheets, just like, and that only required like 4 plywood sheets and a few other pieces. And it was like, I mean, plywood used to be like a 4x8 plywood used to be like $20. I think like pre-COVID. That sounds crazy now because it was like 120 like in 2022 or something. And now it's
I remember that
gone down like 50 maybe, but it's just it'll never go back to pre-COVID prices. I'm sure this conversation is fascinating to like all 4 of you, like whatever,
oh yeah.
I see what you mean about the intersection of woodworking and our cars.
Well, even you said bicycle. Like I have a 70s or 80s. I'm not actually sure the provenance of it, but I have a Japanese track frame.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm rebuilding a Univega Super right now. I found just a frame on Nextdoor. I was trolling Nextdoor free stuff, and the guy was like, "I got a free frame." So I was like, "Hell yeah!" It's not the first kind of old like steel road bike I've rebuilt, but it's been a few years since I've done that, so I'm looking forward to it.
I'm in your boat. I love tinkering and working on stuff and seeing how it works and
that's cool.
Fixing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I have my job. I have luckily the kind of luxury of doing that. Being a high school teacher, I get like summers off, winter breaks off, so I have a lot of like free time to kind of just do shit like that, which is I'm very lucky that I have that.
I'm laid off right now, but I'm a machinist, welder, fabricator. Okay. I do metalworking generally, so also like that's just fixing and figuring out how to do stuff is my job.
Yeah.
I just wish I had like the time and the extra money to do it, man.
Yeah.
That GTI makes me sad. Like I need to sell that thing now because it's like it's gonna fucking rust out if I just let it sit any longer.
I don't know what a GTI.
But I'm like, you don't know what a GTI is?
A GTI? No.
A Volkswagen GTI, like one of the most common fucking cars.
Oh, okay, yeah, I see this.
It's just a Golf that's it's got a little bit of a fucking spice to it, you know.
What's that? Oh, Pinto. It looks like a Pinto.
A Pinto?
Yeah.
I should fucking just take you to the back right now, bro.
I want to find a Lada. There's like a Reddit.
Lada?
Yeah, there's like a Reddit subcommunity that like are just like American Lada owners, and like I feel like you could, you can import one relatively inexpensively, and I like that's the goal too, is like build a Lada.
Well, you don't find a lot of them.
No, you do not know. I can honestly, I
That
could
joke did not
probably
land. Shit.
No, I got it. I thought it was funny. But I think the irony is you do find they're flooded in like Eastern Europe, aren't they?
They're hard
Yeah,
to find
Bosnia.
here. I've looked.
Oh, okay.
Bro, go to Bosnia. Go to Bosnia. They're cheap as fuck.
Yeah, if you go to like Google Earth and like just go to like Slovakia or something, it's just like all over the place. It's just a lot of.
I want to get myself a Yugo or a Zastava, which are like old Yugoslavian cars.
Mm.
That is like my dream is to build like the Yugo is basically based off the Rabbit, right? The Yugo 45, and it's just garbage. The car is garbage, but I love it because it's like that's my people shit. You know what I mean? But I want to like completely gut it, put like an R32 engine from like a V-Dub R32, all-wheel drive, 350 horsepower, and just make that thing take off like drag races. They're so light, you know, but they are garbage. They fall apart, like they rust like nothing.
Yeah, the Yugo's reputation is not great.
Oh no, it's not, but it's great. It's working. Don't worry.
Yeah, I just like we can't see chat and stuff here, so
That's why I have it on my phone.
yeah. Oh well, just pull this up. Oh, we also didn't like broadcast this at all.
Well, I just put up a story.
Oh, sorry. Did you on Instagram?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're like, if you haven't noticed, this whole thing was like just out of nowhere. Well, not out of nowhere. We wanted. To do this
we planned it ahead of time. We're just bad at it.
week.
We're just bad at planning, I guess.
We wanted to do it last week, but we just had not had the time like to actually properly plan anything. It's so much work, man. It's a bunch of bullshit. But I mean, how often do you guys film for you guys' podcast? Like this, like I noticed that it could be like a weekly thing, and then there'll be like a 2-month gap.
For us, no. We actually, you know, we have a backlog right now of episodes that need edited, but we record every 2 weeks with some exceptions. Like we were on a weekly model for probably the first like year, and man, that was rough. Because the thing about being car guys who have a podcast is like, one, you have to work overtime to afford your hobby, and then you have to find time for your hobby. So then to find time to record, and we are inefficient, dude. If we record an 1.5 hour long episode, we were probably bullshitting on call for 5 hours.
We've tightened that process down a little bit. We're like a little more like, you know.
Well, this is my hobby, so
yeah, that's fair. I have other hobbies. I just handle the audio editing, which usually is pretty quick. Kenan does like the video editing, which I don't envy that. Although I have to,
miserable.
I still have to edit we had our Communist Party state convention last weekend, and I have to
anymore.
Yeah, well, you're not. I guess you're not a member anymore, but
I am. I'm just not active.
Yeah, not an active member. But I have to edit that video we recorded.
I would love to ask you guys about that. Since you have joined our group chat, I've made an active effort to not make fun of CPUSA. But
no, it's okay. You can make fun of it. Yeah, we don't care.
Okay, well, just like how'd you settle on that party? Because I don't have anything specifically against it. It's just like.
I joined in Phoenix, Arizona a few years ago, and like every so the problem with CPUSA is that national is like this big tent national org, and then individual cities have their own chapters.
Yeah.
And one hand does not know what the other is doing. Like, and it's actually to the point where it's such a meme within like local chapters. Like, we're constantly just like trying to figure out what the fuck national's doing. And like certain cities are really like on top of it. Certain cities are like completely infested with trots or feds or whatever. So like it's really hit or miss, kind of depending on your city. And in Phoenix, Arizona, it's just a bunch of guys that just do like a lot of mutual aid, like really serious on the ground mutual aid with a lot of unhoused folks, a lot of like the local black rights groups. A lot of the local like ICE detention center stuff, and I was just seeing like kind of at the BLM protests and early 2020, just like I was out at a lot of the protests, and it was just CPUSA just had such a heavy presence, and I just kind of started chatting with the guys. I was in SRA already, and so I was in, and there was a little bit of crossover with SRA, but SRA was kind of a shit show because you had like IMT guys and trots, and just there it was like just a complete like a smorgasbord.
I know they try to be like big tent, but.
Yeah. And so anyway,
Pittsburgh is all anarchists, and if you show up and can quote Marx, you're probably not welcome.
Oh, funny, yeah.
No, that like
they were pretty open. Like there was some like tankies in like I say that lovingly because I am a tanky. In SRA, there was some like some total anarchists. It was like Arizona's a pretty big gun culture place. Like the SRA, they're more about guns than about politics. There was like that was a huge organization in the Phoenix, Arizona SRA. But I got in touch with CPUSA through them. Started kind of showing up at some of their events and then just joined the party from there. And I got lucky. Phoenix was a really good city for CPUSA. And then I recently moved to Seattle last summer. And then kind of because I was already part of the party and like what they did, I just transferred to the Seattle club, and I got lucky again. The Seattle club is also like incredibly well organized. They're hardcore, like Marxist Leninists. They like do a lot of on the ground work, mutual aid, a lot of educational stuff. They're big. There's a bunch of guys that are super big into labor organizing. They're in the IBEW and a bunch of different unions here. So like, they're like we are aware of the memes and of kind of the stigma that comes with CPUSA, right? But like I can tell you from the past like 4 years that I've been a member, I haven't seen that, but I've gotten incredibly lucky in the 2 chapters. I have definitely seen that from nationals, and I've heard horror stories about other cities, even from like the longer time members I'm with now. I've just gotten lucky, so I can't really speak to other people.
I have been meeting with nationals because I was the chairman of the outreach and propaganda for the Seattle. Hell, I stepped down, and I could tell you that national is, I mean, you can consider them socialists, but there's like a liberal aspect to them. There's just something there where just like they're old, they're like fucking 70, 75. They don't want to fucking let go. They want to beat this vanguard party, but can't like properly arrange elections. They can't properly arrange like their YouTube. They can't. Their podcast is like some 75-year-old guy on Zoom trying to talk to other people that are also 75 years old. And I'm not being ageist saying, you know, there's something wrong with being 75, but I'm just saying like they have an old type of mindset. And
I saw it during the last election when the National was doing the whole like, this is the most important election of our life. You have to vote for Joe Biden shit. And like, okay, so I would say historically speaking, I know a lot more about CPUSA than average because my sort of pet research project is researching like leftism in the U.S. in the 1900s. So a lot from like 1900 to like into the 70s.
And CPUSA is such an up and down history. But no, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're good. That's how talking works.
I just know that what they're like inside of CPUSA, they are fighting back against like the older generation. They're trying to change shit. It's just kind of hard because like bureaucracy.
Yeah,
you know.
I can definitely say from experience that like again, this is purely anecdotal because I've only been a part of 2 cities clubs, but both of those cities had really strong young guys that were like very much like Marxist Leninists, really kind of good head on their shoulders, just like really wanted to push the party forward in kind of a more revolutionary, I guess, pardon the kind of cliche, but like in a more revolutionary direction, kind of very anti-electoral politics, really kind of like not supporting of any kind of bourgeois political party, Democrat or otherwise. And so like that's definitely been a bigger push from what I've seen on both fronts.
Not that I like have sought it out, but I don't think I've ever met a CPUSA member in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never heard. I know like the Chicago club is pretty big. I think like the Austin club, the New York club, but I don't know if I've ever heard of any news coming out of the Pittsburgh club.
As far as like communist PSLs are bigger one, and it's not even huge.
And we have a huge PSL presence here in Seattle too. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of like that's one of the questions like we ask in like new member like interviews and stuff is like, well, why'd you choose CPUSA over like Party of Communist USA, PAC USA, as well as like PSL or FRSO? Or
even we're confused why.
Yeah. And then usually it's just like, well, yours was the one that came up, right? Like, you know, because there's like you basically have like 5 big-ish parties to choose from, and you just kind of choose the one. I got lucky because, like I said, I saw what they were doing in Phoenix, and I was pretty impressed by it.
I saw really like the deprogram kind of like, oh, you should get out there, you should get involved. And I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna get involved. You know, I've been a fucking Marxist for years, and I'm like, I've been just saying shit but not doing shit. So they had somebody from CPUSA, I think CPUSA Miami, and they're like,
yeah, but also JT Chapman is a member of, I think, the Austin? Is he in Austin or Dallas? Wherever he's at.
I can't remember. But yeah, so I was just like, that was the first one that popped up. I'm like, that's the one I'm going to.
Yeah.
Not really looking into, you know, their politics or anything like that. I just wanted to get involved. And you know, from there,
I was a gun guy first, so I joined SRA. Like, that was the one. I was like, yes, that's it. You know, 4 years later and having read a considerable amount of theory, I'm like, okay, well, that was a mistake to do SRA. If I could do it all over again, I'd probably go with like John Brown or something because they're a little more much love to SRA, but they're less LARPers, I guess, about it. They're not as like, they're a little more serious.
Without knowing for sure, I would say that maybe that depends heavily on the local chapter too, because I've heard exactly that, and I've heard like I have a friend actually a guy I know from our show who, he's somewhere in Tennessee. I forget what SRA branch it is. And him and his folks, like I guess they got tired of like the national group and just basically separated. So they're no longer technically SRA. It's just all the same dudes doing the same shit.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I'm not an SRA. I haven't been in a few years now, but I from what I understand, their national like if you, like is absolutely like a shit show, like to the nth degree. Like it's just like apparently there was like a schism and there was some like beef and somebody took all the money and ran, and it's like this was in the last couple of years. It's just like a fucking nightmare. So I have no idea what's going on over there, but yeah, I can't imagine it's good. But yeah, same. There's like I think it's like there's a couple like chapters or whatever you want to call it because they're like regional based. They're not quite chapters. They're more like regions now. And like there's like an Ohio chapter that puts out these like really high quality like instructional videos on like like gun safety and gun like and training and just tips and stuff. And they have
is that the
like,
Northeast Ohio chapter?
yeah, the NEO. They're like the
Yeah, they
most,
seem
like,
solid.
yeah, so, and that's kind of, and there's also another one that's like it's called Inland Empire. It's like I think like Central California, kind of the Inland Empire of California. They're a
Yeah.
similar one too. So like they're almost like these like like they've almost kind of spun off and just like they're their own org now. They're still under the like the umbrella of SRA, but they're just so well organized and so well like just funded. I'm not sure how their funding works, but you know what I mean. They're just so like it just looks tight and it just looks like they really have their stuff together. So I don't know. Shout out to what individual clubs are doing, but yeah, I assume it's the same with John Brown, where it's just like individually. The Seattle John Brown is like so fucking secretive and like so like tight with their security that it's like impossible to talk to those guys. So I imagine they're taking it pretty seriously, but I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad
From
thing.
what I recall, I think that the Pittsburgh John Brown Club basically dissolved and folded into SRA because like I think it's all the same folks.
Yeah, I imagine the crossover is probably pretty huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, but in general, I mean, all the clubs, all the communists, all the socialist clubs, it's too small, man. We just gotta combine into one huge fucking thing and get everything a whack.
Yeah, that's kind of what Izdahar was saying. Like every time Izdahar goes to an event, she's
I
like,
tend to be like lean towards being like a big tent guy. Like you don't have to agree with me for point, but as long as you're not a trot, come on in.
Yeah, that's exactly my. I'm on record saying the exact thing multiple times. Yeah.
Islamic Socialist says I am in SRA. It's falling apart. National, which is all anarchists at this
Yeah,
point,
I've heard that.
isn't helping most, if not the cells the way they need. And National is hostile as fucked MLs.
I've heard that too. I've heard like MLs, tankies
because locally that's I found. Man, this is just internet drama bullshit, but like it hammered some stuff home for me. No, like so I fuck with PSL here. Like I'm not a member, but Nick from the Intervention is very, very active PSL member, and he's a buddy of mine. If I get around to joining a party, I have some notable mental health issues that give me a lot of motivation for some parts of the year. And not even a lot of motivation to get out of bed or live my life others. So I am too inconsistent and don't want to. I'm reluctant to join a party until I get some of my own stuff resolved. That said, PSO. I was looking into it and I like came across like a handful of threads, and there's all these like anarchist groups locally who will just get online and bash them. And the stuff that they were bashing them for was like going to protests and trying to recruit people. And I'm like, wait. What are y'all doing? Like, are you just like super happy to have 6 members and that's your like cutoff? Like, anarchists tried to shout them down at rallies where they were speaking, and it's just absurd.
Yeah, I'm always like happy to work with anarchists. Like we have anarchists in CPUSA that are like kind of like proud anarchists, and like there's a couple. I'll tell you who after, but and like but they do the work and they're there to help out. They're there to put in like work. They work with the mutual aid kind of stuff, and it's like that's cool, man. I mean, I don't as long as you're not like critiquing my ideology, I'm not really going to critique yours. It's cool for us to disagree on certain things as long as we're all vaguely leftist. But then that's like the in-person like anarchist, but then like there's the online anarchist, which just shits on anything they consider tanky, and like it's just these authoritarian tankies want to do all this stuff. And I'm just like, come on, man.
As long as somebody is anti-capitalist and they don't want they don't want me to vote for like National Democrats, I'm chill with that.
Yeah. And I like PCL or PSL. I like that they're organized enough to run like legit candidates. I mean, not like I'm super like pro electoral politics, but it's cool that they are running Claudia and Karina, and like they're doing it like in a very like visible and very like vocal way, and I just appreciate that in terms of like at least getting the word out there and kind of having a conversation about it. I don't like. I don't know if it's the best use of like money and energy to run electoral candidates. Like, I'm still kind of torn on that. I still haven't really made up my mind on whether or not I think that's a good idea for like a communist organization or a socialist organization to do. But they're doing it, and they're doing it well. So,
if I had a critique, it would simply be like timing wise. Are we, or is PSL big enough right now that that's where their energy and resources need to go? But like, as much as I'm not going to go and advocate super hard for a electoral like bourgeois politics, at the same time, like there's a precedent. You know, the Panthers did it. They ran Eldridge Cleaver in the late '60s, and I think it was Cleaver who was not even old enough to legally be president when they ran. So they knew like that it was absolutely not a thing. It was done with specific intention of getting eyes on the party, with getting attention, with addressing issues, addressing grievances. And I think that if you go into that, then there's like plenty of precedents within Leninism to engage with electoral politics without relying on it.
Yeah, I think that's 100% accurate. Yeah.
So I mean, like I said, I would maybe question the timing, but if the national party has more resources and bodies than I'm aware of, fuck yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and I guess like to that point, like sure, it was probably the timing's not ideal for like internally, right? Like it's just not a big enough movement, not enough money, not enough eyes, but there, you know, you dance with the one the burning young, right? Like it's 2024, it's Trump Biden. It's kind of like this is the time if you were going to throw your hat in the ring, it is now, and like you can't really wait until, because who the fuck knows what's going to happen in 2028, or it'll be they'll both be dead, I would assume. So like it's like a whole different landscape. So if you're going to do it, I guess you have to do it now. So whether or not you're ready, you got to throw it in.
I'm assuming in 2028 we'll be like backed into a corner and be forced to vote for 99.5% Hitler.
Right. Get that compromise, baby. Yeah.
All right, you won't vote for 99%.
But 99.5?
But hell,
now we're talking.
We have a 98% Hitler. I think we can reach a deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
This one doesn't kill Romas or homosexuals.
Just,
you know, but we'll kill everybody else. I don't know. I think it's the amount, like the amount of socialist parties that are kind of pushing for like voting for Democrats is like, oh, like the lesser evil. It's just gross. It's like we're not going to get anywhere with this.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're
fucking Brownerism over here.
Yeah, there's the national convention is coming up, and that's what we're going to be talking about. For CPUSA, the national convention is in June, and that's going to probably be a big talking point, is whether or not
do you know if you're
to endorse. Oh, I'm going.
Are you going?
Yeah.
Yeah. Better freaking vote out them damn liberals out of the party.
We'll see. I don't know if that's like private information. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be saying this online, but it's fine. Who cares?
Honestly, just for the sake of like, nostalgia is not the right word. I'm not even sure what I'm getting at, but I would love to see CPUSA turned into what it once was. Like, it's like you said, it's had its weird arcs, but man, when you look at it historically, it's done some fucking good.
Yeah, and I just watched. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Trumbo, which is kind of like, I mean, it's kind of the messaging of that movie gets a little weird at the end. I honestly couldn't tell if it was like pro or anti-communist at the end, but it was all about the history of CPUSA during the McCarthy era. Like it was all the screenwriters that got like arrested and blacklisted from Hollywood for being members of CPUSA.
HUAC, yeah.
Yeah, all the HUAC hearings, and so like it had a bunch of. And Bryan Cranston was the main character of the main CPUSA member who like refused to like capitulate, and he was thrown in jail for like I think a year or something, for contempt of court for like refusing to testify, and then
who is he playing?
He's playing Trumbo. I forget his name. Walter Trumbo. Oh. He wrote like Ben-Hur. He wrote like a bunch of like 50s and 60s movies. Like pretty much like all of the major motion pictures from Hollywood from the 50s was written by this guy, and he was like a very vocal CPUSA member, and he went to prison for like not refusing to say he wasn't, because he thought it was unconstitutional to be like, you know, which it was, but that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, the HUAC trials were definitely really interesting, and I don't know, there, so Aaron Leonard, there's a book called the folk singers in the Bureau, and it's all about like just folk music in the like 30s and 40s. Woody Guthrie and like Alan Lomax, all these folks who
Yeah.
were either CPUSA members or hung around. Like there's contention over whether or not Woody Guthrie ever was, but it's widely believed that he just generally had never been a member. Mostly because the party wouldn't have him; they didn't find him reliable. But
Fair enough.
he was a traveling man. He was.
Yeah, no, I like Woody Guthrie. At least I like that.
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
era of, like those are like the working man's like folk songs about like the union guys or whatever.
And now we
Yeah,
have
but
that who's that recent like country singer that just came out with like the working song, but he's like super conservative.
Oh, that red-haired guy. Oh,
Now we got that guy.
Yeah,
I don't think he's conservative. I don't think he knows what his politics are.
yeah. I think that was kind of the thing because I think he had some other songs or like older interviews or whatever where he was like he became like I think that's looking through it through the lens of like Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder like hyping this guy up, but he himself was not like saying I think what they're saying he's saying.
I've seen interviews with him decrying conservatives, or at least like short clips. Of it.
I think that's what I've heard too.
I grew up in the Deep South, and so I personally know what it looks like to start inching towards progressivism and not having all of your ideas fully fleshed out. And I am really glad that some of my opinions were not made super public when I was, younger, because I'd look like a real piece of shit.
Same, dude. I grew up in like the deep woods of Louisiana. So like, yeah, like I'm sure I've like, I can't really remember because I moved to Arizona when I was like 8 or 9 maybe. So I split my like youth between Arizona, which wasn't much better because it wasn't like like Southern Arizona wasn't this like progressive mecca. It was also just kind of cowboys and shit.
I lived in Georgia till I was 22. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So like if I had if I hadn't gotten out when I did, I'd probably be just as racist as my parents. I haven't spoken to my mom in like years. She's
I don't think I've spoken to my dad in like 15 years. I don't know, ever since he died.
Oh, fair enough.
Wait, what?
Yeah. My mom is still alive, but she's a racist. She's a QAnon MAGA flat earther.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah, she's like hitting all of the.
Jesus, man. Gotta love the dark
Jesus,
humor.
Dude, the fucking Diamondbacks can't win a game to save their life, dude. It's gonna be a rough season. I came on to just talk about baseball all night.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I made that joke. Actually, I made that joke like in our second episode when the Diamondbacks were at the World Series. And now the season has started and they're just like shit in the bed. You watch baseball, Brandon?
No. If I were to ever break down and try to dedicate time to something like that, it would probably be hockey.
Hockey fan from Georgia. Interesting.
That lives in Pittsburgh.
That lives in
Okay.
Pittsburgh. Okay.
Yeah.
I moved out of Georgia when I was 22, and I'm 40. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh's Penguins. You're thinking of Philly.
Yeah, that's Philly Flyers, right?
When did you start like getting into like progressivism, socialism, whatever you want to call it? What was your first like breakthrough, or were you always?
It was a wild ride because I got into like punk rock and shit when I was a teenager. So I thought I was an anarchist, which basically meant I was an edgy liberal, and I didn't know it. I had a really sick professor when I was in college who I really truly don't know what his politics were, but he fucking liked Marx. And we like he liked to approach things like from a dialectical materialist perspective. And so I remember reading portions of Marx well before I actually like started reading Marx. And like a lot of it really resonated, and I was just really dumb and didn't even know like what I was dipping my toes into. I did not realize the significance of Marx at the time. I would say probably dude, I feel like a baby leftist because I only started getting like more serious about like actual coherent politics rather than anarchism, probably in my like early to mid 30s. But then I like look back at stuff and I'm like, oh no, it's closing in on 10 years. But there was a few things that I was probably like a communist in my early to mid 30s, but it was around COVID times where like all of the propaganda got stripped away. I just remember reading the headline that like it was basically China builds hospital in 9 days to combat COVID, but at what cost? And I'm like,
But at what cost?
what the fuck did you just do? Like you took an unequivocally good thing and made it bad. How did you do that? I need to learn more about this shit. And like, I don't know, there was a few things like that. I read some headline where they were it was like it was about Russia, and it was a but what it costs kind of headline, because they were talking about how like something like 50% of scientists and engineers and everything like that in Russia were women, as an extension of Soviet policies, like that have just.
But at what cost?
Yeah, no, but like the whole article, I read it and it was very much phrased like these women were forced into medical school and engineering school and into the sciences, and I'm like, I don't think your perspective is intelligent.
Yeah.
And it was a moment where like propaganda backfired, and I'm like, this is so astoundingly stupid. I need to like do the reading and find out what the reality behind this is. And lo and behold, everything that I held to be true was not true.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's like the same thing with Cuba, right? Where it's like 80% of the world's doctors come from Cuba, or some crazy number, and it's like, but what is that doing to like, you know, America's medical infrastructure or whatever? And it's like, who cares, man?
Dude, no Cuban ever has to go to the hospital because every other Cuban is a doctor. You just go to your brother.
Go to the next door. Yeah.
Yeah, the Cuba thing, like I remember the one that turned me around on that, because like I kept hearing like from anybody who had never paid attention to fucking anything about how bad and authoritarian and oppressive Cuba is. And one day I decided to start reading into some stuff, and it didn't quite make sense. And I hear about how Cuba hates gay people, and you know, this would have been like probably the mid to late 2010s, like 17, 18ish. And yeah, so like I'm hearing all this stuff, so I decided to research it, and I come across the interviews with Castro where he's just like, yeah, we're super pro gay people. It's just during the revolution we had better things to worry about, and I didn't educate myself, but I feel bad and terrible for everything that I did before, but we've done everything we can to make it right now. Yeah. Cuba was the first state to start having gender reassignment surgery, and it was covered by the state healthcare. I think that somebody beat them out. It might have been like East Germany or something like that, but it was one of those things that didn't hold out. Like,
yeah, I remember that. I saw that like little factoid somewhere. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was like 93.
Yeah,
America can't decide if being gay is okay, and Cuba's doing state sanctioned, you know, gender reassignment surgery, and I'm like, there's if you are pro any queer politics, there's a clear winner in that race. So why do you guys hate Cuba?
Yeah,
it's just,
I know. When I watched his speeches, like, because you would always hear, you know, from your youth, you know, about Castro being a dictator, and you know the fucking the dictatorship of Cuba, and look what they're doing, all the Cubans fleeing to Miami, and then you watch the man talk at UN and just spouting like how sick society, the global like society is, not helping people in Africa, not like supporting peace. And you're just like, dude, this guy's really not bad. And you just keep going deeper and deeper. And you get to videos like him talking to, how to explain it? Him talking to like the press in the West, saying our enemy is not the American people, but the American corporations, the American government. He's like, nah, this guy's good. I'm like, what? Who the fuck is talking shit about this guy? And you realize, whoa, maybe, you know, things like fucking propaganda really exist. It's really eye-opening. He walks into New York with nothing but a fucking like ruggedy ass green dress shirt.
As him going to Harlem, because that's a fuck. Like, I wish I remember the details better, but I remember every time I read about it, I'm just like, that is so fucking sick.
They asked him, you know, what was like, oh, you don't have any bodyguards, you don't have any, you don't have a bulletproof vest. I remember he just like sticks a cigar in his mouth, opens his chest. He's like, I'm wearing a moral protection.
Yeah,
you know, I was like, oh, that's so badass, bro. How can you not like this guy?
Yeah, I remember that like moment. I had some. Oh, I was gonna say, not to like kind of toot CPUSA's horn, but we had last summer we rented out a movie theater and played Motorcycle Diaries, and like kind of had this like public event of you know, just a movie screening kind of, but then we had a panel at the end of it with some people that had just got back from Cuba. Cuba at the time had just finished up their like national convention of their Communist Party, and they we had like there was the Vietnamese Communist Party was there, like members of the Chinese Communist. It was like this big, you know, whatever, and they had this panel of just folks from Cuba, and it was cool just to be able to ask them questions about like what life is really like. It's like, oh, what is public transportation like? What is the healthcare system like? And it was just really eye opening, and just being able to like have these like we talked for quite a long time of just like what it was actually like to live in Cuba, and it was just very cool. just get those answers and just get like kind of lift the veil of like all of the secrecy, and it was cool.
Speaking of Cuba and communism, is Tupac still alive?
No.
No.
I mean,
just,
Asada is, isn't she?
Yeah, no, I believe she is. I believe she's still in Cuba. That's a conspiracy theory I never understood until I got, later in life. I'm like, why would they go to Cuba? I thought people were just fucking around. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, Tupac was a fucking commie, really. Like his fucking whole family was communist. And I never knew this. I had friends that were like deep into Tupac Shakur. They loved this guy, right? Like always talking about him. None of them knew that his whole family was like part of the Black Panthers. That he himself was basically essentially a communist. And I think that was purposeful. Like they're trying to cut off any sort of connection between very popular artists and revolutionaries.
Yeah, I mean,
That's that's a thing that's been so obvious to me for so long. And dude, it was a couple of years ago. I can't remember if it was State and Revolution or What Is to Be Done, but Lenin discusses capitalism's ability to take a really effective leader like that, or any figure that is good for the movement, and strip it of everything worthwhile and rebrand it as just like I never cared that much about Martin Luther King Jr. He just wasn't an interesting figure to me until I learned the real Martin Luther King Jr. stuff. Like when you just like what I learned in elementary school or like from like basic media, when you don't know that he's like actually advocating for labor rights and he's working with unions nationally to like promote, like, and he was not well liked, he was hated. Yeah, you can take any figure like that who actually stands for something and means something. Like now that Tupac's not the best example, because I mean he was I've seen the picture that has gone around every now and then of like his Young Communist League like membership card and stuff like that. Like I know it's real, but he was not like an active party member later in life. He did kind of move past that part of life. But I mean, it's also when you listen to his music, you can't ignore how that upbringing impacted his views of things.
Still very class conscious. He still had that class consciousness.
Really class conscious. Really, like there's just a lot of like obviously the race, like racial issues, but also like class and just like I think like there's a lot of imperialism, like kind of references to like American imperialism and just Western imperialism. It's very like a lot of talking points of kind of a communist, whether or not he clearly identified as such. The talking points were there, or at least the general vibe was on.
I think in general, once you have any sort of class consciousness, that will never go away, man. You can't ever think the same. And that's like bringing it back to when you said when you read Marx, you didn't realize how like prolific it is to read such a big part of like politics and economics. Such an awakening, and a lot of times they have you read this kind of stuff in high school because you won't understand like the significance of it. Because as a high schooler, you'll go. Oh, let's go.
No, you keep
yeah, as a high schooler, they'll have you like read like sort of like, oh, everybody, equality for everybody, but that doesn't work, blah blah blah. But then when you actually go off on your own and read certain works and listen to certain people, you're like, no, this makes complete sense. And the significance of like reading Marx or any sort of class consciousness will stick with you forever. And that you can hear that in Tupac's songs, even though he wasn't actually part of CPUSA or any other type of communist party later on in life. That will never go away. Those perspectives.
Yeah, I remember that. Like, I read Communist Manifesto like earlier on, kind of when I was kind of discovering and reading a bunch of theory and kind of getting deeper into like Marxism. You read Communist Manifesto pretty early on, but if you go back and reread it after you've read a bunch of theory, or like just like read it through like a different, more experienced lens, it's crazy how much more you can get from it, and how it speaks to like Marx was right. And it's just like that classic cliche of just like Marx was right, the immortal science of Marxism, where it's like everything he says, it's just so like there's even like snarky comments in like a lot of his stuff that's like shit talking liberals or whatever, and it's just so funny that like everything that dude wrote has come true or is like completely accurate, and it's just so funny. And that's not a hot take. I just fucking love Marx.
No, Marx is great. I worry about people who are too dogmatic, because we have 150,
Yeah.
60 some odd years of information that he didn't have, and you can't be right about everything. I think I'm not going to dismiss any of the theory that he's contributed. He's the fucking foundation for everything we're doing. But I wish people would be less dogmatic and approach it more as a science, where it's like, okay, if in any other science new evidence is presented to you, you have to adapt and grow. And I see too many.
You got to read that one there. Dialectical Materialism by Stalin, like, kind of taking it like, not to show my tankiness, but like I got a lot of Stalin and I read a lot of Stalin because Stalin had a lot of good things to say about that in particular, which is like, yeah.
I have On the National Question on my fucking coffee table right now. It's next in the queue. Yeah.
It's good, man. Like, I think he's good. I think he kind of he talked a lot about that, which is like, like, yes, it's important to like read Marx, important to understand Marx, but it's also important to apply it to your particular scenario. Like that was literally 100 years, a little less than 100 years later, and things have changed. The world has changed. The world didn't in 1848 when Communist Manifesto was written. In 1948, after the post-World War II, those were not the same worlds, and so you can't apply the same philosophy and ideology to it.
And since we're doing this, the one thing that I kind of wish people would stop doing, and this is I don't want to say it's nitpicky because I feel like it's an important distinction that needs to be made. No one's making it. Is, God damn it, when fucking Lenin is talking about liberals, he's talking about people who are like pro-capital. Like, he's talking about a liberalized economy. He's not talking about like your crunchy ant,
like liberalism, like an infantile or like anything.
Yeah, like so many people like to quote Lenin to decry like the modern liberal, but I think that the more accurate interpretation of that would be like, if you were to update it, it would be neoliberalism.
Yeah, I've always taken that to mean like lowercase L, like just like Western democracy, like Athenian style democracy, basically, like, or just, I don't know, maybe that's a little too broad, but you know what I mean, just modern liberalism.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I guess, people love the scratch a liberal and a fascist bleeds thing, and if you apply that to liberalism in like a neoliberal sense, I see not the slightest issue with that. If you're just talking about like, fucking hippies and
the Whole Foods Biden Harris bumper sticker, obviously that doesn't really apply.
A lot of people can disassociate like progressive liberalism, where it's like socially people are liberal, with actual economic liberalism.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can strip that away and go a step farther, which even that like Whole Foods hippie would probably still, at the end of the day, choose like not fascism if it were presented as such, but like, but I mean, like,
I will say, I specifically say that because if you want our movement to grow, you have to have a pool of people to draw from. And if you reject conservatives and liberals, you don't have the biggest pool left to draw from.
Yeah, both conservatives and liberals are just Marxists that haven't read enough theory yet. Like, that's like, I mean, that's a little generic, but I think that is a lot of what it comes down to, right? I mean, we were all liberals at one point. I mean, I would assume every one of us in this room was like a liberal, and then an edgy liberal, and then an anarchist, and then a Marxist-Leninist.
I was never an anarchist.
You skipped that stage. Okay. Yeah. I kind of skipped that. I went from like liberal to Bernie to like tanky. But
I was an anarcho-primitivist for like 7 years.
Yeah, the point is we all have this like, journey, and like, the Whole Foods liberal shoppers with their Biden Harris on their Priuses, their Biden Harris bumper stickers on their Priuses, they could be at a CPUSA meeting tomorrow, they could be at a PSL meeting tomorrow. You can't count them out.
Oh, what's that meme? Oh, I love that meme. It's like it's from that one movie with Sandra Bullock, I think, and it's like they can't, if they go outside, they have to like close their eyes.
Bird Box.
Oh yes, Bird Box. And there's like a meme where they have like the person trying to open her eyes to look at it, but it's like MLs to liberals, like trying to Marxist work.
Well, I mean, it's so funny because we've had this exact same conversation with both Mike and Islamic Socialist of like, and I'm pretty sure Sally hates capitalism, just like back to back to back. Like, yeah, and conservatives are also like on that same page too, right? Like conservatives, especially like QAnon conservatives, the MAGA people, they're so close to like class consciousness. They're like one step away. they just took a wrong turn. You just got to back them up a couple steps, and then because they're already anti-establishment, they're already kind of anti, like they recognize the problems with capitalism, although they probably wouldn't identify it as such. They're like almost there. You just have to kind of walk them to over the edge.
You have to explain
root
why.
and root out some of the kind of
These
like
are the problems.
the either bigotry or racism or homophobia that's there, like that. But again, I believe that those all come from they all root from capitalism. So if you can kind of show the errors of capitalism, bigotry and homophobia and racism will kind of fall by the wayside, in theory.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know. When we were talking to Islamic socialists, we had like the same exact, I suppose, like speech. Basically, there's just like, how many times do we have to like open people's eyes just to look at it a certain way, but they're always just shutting things down because they're so like purposely ignorant. I don't know what do we have to do to get people just to give it a shot. Just read read a little bit of this, read a little bit of that.
My best friend is basically defeated me in this respect because he's come around. He'll espouse like anti-capitalist rhetoric and go in on a lot of the bigger talking points at this point. But like, dude, I'll never forget when I got into an argument with him about Uyghurs, and I was just like, dude, I have sources. You don't have to agree with them, but at least like read my perspective. And he was like, no. I'm like, oh, so like that's where we're at. Is if I have a valid point, you don't want to hear it. And he's like, yeah, basically. I'm like, oh, okay.
Wow. Dude, that's actually so fucking funny. I've had that exact same conversation with like a close personal friend of mine who is like a liberal, and like, they're kind of they're socialist on a couple principles. They're like more liberal on others. They're like blue no matter who, whatever.
So DSA.
Not even that far. I mean, like, just Democrat Party people. But anyway, we had a conversation about Uyghurs. And this was like 3 years ago, like before we really knew a whole lot. I think it was even before the UN like went in and investigated and found nothing. But in the lefty like tanky circles, a lot of like that kind of like early red flags of all of these stories kind of not really adding up, and like the author of all of them was that guy Adrian Zins, who was like a known like just blatant xenophobic racist guy, and every story this like fucking psychopath, and every story just related like kind of you could trace its origin back to him, and it's just like, all right, a lot of this isn't adding up. Before we kind of totally condemn China, maybe we should get a little more info, and like there actually might not be a Uyghur genocide happening. And that was the same thing. My friend like got really upset and just kind of shut down the conversation and like kind of wanted me to leave. And I was just like, oh my God, okay. Like
I couldn't even get my buddy to read an article from like many years earlier where during the Obama administration, they were talking about like the problem of like terrorism amongst the Uyghurs.
We did a whole long, we did a pretty deep dive on that. We pulled up the UN reports, like where they found no wrongdoing. They like even the Muslim countries went in, investigated, no wrongdoing. There was like all the reports of all of the terrorism, like the terrorist attacks that led up to that event. Like we did a pretty deep dive on this, like I don't know, 5-6 months ago or something. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, because we had talked about it, and it was with Faye, and it was like with a friend of ours, and like it was just we were like kind of unsure, like I like, oh yeah, whatever, circled back on that, like whatever happened with the whole Uyghur thing, and it was quietly swept under the rug because if you can't paint China as the boogeyman, you got to go quiet that one and go find another way to do it, and so that one was like the big news of it actually not being a genocide was never widely published. It was kind of swept under the rug because
Well, if you go deep into it, you're like, who was basically calling out China for doing genocide? Like, okay, the U.S. Did the UN agree? They did not. Did the UN?
Well, do remember that China did welcome like I don't like a ambassador or whatever, but China invited the U.S. to come inspect, and we declined to send anyone because we couldn't risk proving ourselves wrong.
Right. Yeah.
But like the thing that fucked me up wasn't any of like the hard facts that we're talking about. It was when I was talking to certain people. Evidence that China was doing something wrong was accepted as hard fact, and evidence that China wasn't was Chinese propaganda.
Right. Yeah,
like
it's always propaganda. If it's from our side, it's propaganda. It's from their side, it's fact.
It's all propaganda. It's just where's the truth?
Dude, I have this liberal. I've talked about this guy too quite a bit. There's like these characters. I really want to bring this guy on though, because he's incredibly intelligent. Like this is the part I don't get to, because usually it's like not to be like totally classist or like elitist or whatever, but like typically like the smarter somebody is, like in terms of like actual like intelligence or actual like education, academics, this guy's well read. He's like, he's got it together, but he still like refuses to acknowledge communism. He like every time I post any like I'll repost like a turn leftist meme or whatever, he'll immediately slide into my DMs and be like, yeah, what about like the 60 million dead or 100 million dead or whatever, and just like the same talking points over and over. And I'm like, dude, and I've like sent him links, I've sent him like articles, I've sent him like just a wealth of counter arguments, and just refuses to read them, refuses to acknowledge them, and just like it's like, yeah, but that's
man.
But it's just like, but his comeback is always that that's propaganda. That's just propaganda. Those numbers are just propaganda. And I'm like, what are you saying? What are you quoting? What you're quoting is also propaganda. Like that just tells me that you don't know the definition of propaganda, because like it's just so frustrating, man.
Which is like the truth is like, where are those numbers coming from?
Yeah,
where are they coming from? And then you read where they're coming from, the Black Book of Communism or whatever.
Yeah,
and then you read they're literally counting Nazis as part of those deaths. Unborn children that have an abortion. If they had an abortion in the USSR, that counted as a death. And I'm like, dude.
With my buddy that I always argue with, at one point we were, I don't even remember what we were discussing, but I was just like, dude, the CIA admitted to this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because that's the thing. Like, the reason I don't go in for a lot of conspiracy theories is that like, once you've been a communist for I don't know, more than a year, you learn that there are a lot of conspiracy theories, and they're true, and there's a paper trail. There's a long fucking paper trail, dude. If something happened
readily documented
more than 10 or 15 years ago, the paper trail has been made public, and it's not even that fucking hard to find. So I cited some CIA document, and my buddy's response was, "Oh, so you trust the CIA now?" And I'm just like, "Fuck me."
Oh my god.
Yeah, nothing makes you sound crazier. Oh, you cut out if you're talking. Oh no, something makes you sound crazier than just talking about something the CIA has openly admitted to doing. Right? It's just like, oh, the CIA admitted to doing this, and it's like, whoa, what a loony guy talking about the CIA that does this. It's like, no. Just go to their website. This shit is all declassified. Like you can just read about all these operations.
So you won't believe our shit because it's propaganda. But then when we tell you the American propaganda, you won't believe that either.
I love that fact of nothing makes you sound crazier than talking about something the CIA is openly admitted to doing, and it's fascinating to me.
Yeah,
forever frustrating.
Do either of you have either of you ever heard the conspiracy theory where like I don't really know the like super concise way to put it, but it's basically that like the CIA or FBI like introduced drugs and rock and roll to countercultures in the 60s to like diffuse leftist movements. And
I haven't heard that.
One of the cornerstones of that conspiracy theory is that Jim Morrison, the singer from The Doors, his dad was an admiral who I forget the role that he played, but he was somehow involved in the Gulf of Tonkin incident that started Vietnam.
Shit. Okay.
And so he started Vietnam, and then he had a son who started The Doors. And like it's honestly, if you read it, it's a fun conspiracy theory, and it's basically saying that like they pumped all this like cool stuff into culture to just take all the wind out of the sails of like actual social movements. Fun theory, but like there's not one piece of concrete evidence. So people like tell that shit to me, and I'm just like, show me the documents and I will believe it, because that wouldn't be the craziest thing they've ever done.
Like, yeah, all the shit the CIA has done with drugs, with like military and like what was the whatever the LSD shit they tried, and like
MK Ultra.
MK Ultra. They've done all this shit. So yeah, that would not surprise me. It doesn't sound super logical on its surface of like there's no way to like control that, because once the wildfire spread, I mean it'll spread. Like you have no real control over that. But like, sure, I'd believe it if I saw some.
It wasn't logical.
Yeah. Well, I guess most of them weren't logical.
There's also the crack epidemic.
Yeah, in the 80s.
Like the late 80s, and wasn't that like proven to be like? Was it either the FBI?
I think it's heavily, I don't know if it's like been straight up proven, but I think it's been.
There was a dude who had documents. He was an LAPD officer turned private detective. I've never quite done the research to know for sure if he was sort of a wingnut or if he like had good concrete stuff. But I do know he was like, I don't know if he ever actually said like, if you find me having committed suicide, it wasn't me. But he did mysteriously commit suicide.
Oh damn! Well. Yeah, I don't know if that's been like outright proven, but yeah, I think there's a lot more evidence pointing toward like, yes, But that also
it's
makes
proven that like the original like drug kingpin Rick Ross was CIA connected. He got put in touch with his like South American connections by an actual FBI or CIA agent. I don't remember what beyond that is factually true or not, but there is a very clear-cut tie.
Right.
Like unequivocal. 3 parties were involved. A fucking dealer in LA, a South American guy, and a federal agent, CIA, whatever.
What was with that plane? Do you guys remember that? It was like a plane that crashed, and it was like an FBI plane, and there was like a bunch of coke on there. Am I going crazy?
I mean, for stuff like that, I'm never sure if it was the FBI or CIA because when it's happening abroad and then coming home, it's kind of becomes murky ground. But I mean, it's well known that at the very least the CIA has done drug trafficking to help support some of their like black ops
100%,
sorts of stuff.
Yeah. I know fun fact, not a fun fact because people died, but there was so much cocaine that was being shipped. This is not related to the government. This is just a historical fact. So much cocaine was going back and forth during the 80s from Pablo Escobar that there was just a commercial plane that crashed, and just because sometimes plane crashes. And during the autopsies, they found 4 separate mules like with their stomachs just full of cocaine, and it was just like because at that time there was just so much cocaine on every flight, commercial flight to and from like South and Central America, that if the planes crashed, there was a bunch of dead people with cocaine inside them, and that's just
wow.
I think that's just interesting.
The wild thing about that to me is that they were like at that volume they were using mules. I'm like at a certain point, well, how are they not just building the plane out of cocaine? It would still be stronger than a Boeing.
They were. If you know what's his name, Scott McLaughlin. He's the guy from Twin Peaks. Fuck's his name?
Kyle MacLachlan, is that
Kyle
it?
MacLachlan, yeah. He has a new podcast. It's about this town in like Virginia or somewhere on the East Coast somewhere that became like I don't know if it was, I think it was Pablo Escobar's like town where like the entire town was paid off to like just that's where all the shipments of cocaine, I think I may be getting the story wrong, but it was basically
Are you thinking about the town in the swamps in Florida that was like there was roughly 500 residents, and once the feds came onto like their marijuana trafficking operation, like over 400 people in the town went to jail?
Is that where I'm missing this up?
Okay, if you tell me that there's a second town where it was cocaine and not weed, I'm not going to be shocked. But there is, in fact, it's I think it was in Okeechobee Swamp in Florida. It was a friend of mine's hometown. That's like, but it happened like before he was born.
It's called Varnum Town.
Oh yeah, that's something different.
Yeah, Pablo Escobar in the early 80s, a remote coastal southern town of 300 people in exchange for vast wealth and limitless cocaine. Escobar would be allowed to land planes and ships in the area. So there's this town. There's a town called Varnum Town where in North Carolina, which became like his personal port, and he paid off the entire town. So it's kind of what you're describing, but just at a different time that happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess he had paid off like the police were all related, and it was just like the entire town was just paid off by Pablo Escobar for him to use as like a personal port. So I mean, I think he was trafficking so much weight that like he had multiple avenues, like multiple revenue streams coming in.
That's sort of what I mean, though. It's wild that like, because I don't know, maybe they can get like more drugs into a mule than I realize, but like at that point, that just seems like small potatoes when they're like flying whole shipments into towns they own.
Right, like.
But I guess any way to get it in, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's at that point you just get it in the way you can get in, because wasn't there the other guy and that guy was like they made a movie about it with Tom Cruise, American something. He was like a retired Air Force pilot, and he had some kind of clearance, and so he was just muling back and forth on his little private plane nonstop.
I think that was the dude that I read about who would like put a little bit of weed or a little bit of cocaine in a blender and then just puree the ever-loving piss out of it. Like if not him, then somebody else. He said they were going through like multiple blenders a month, but what he was doing was he would basically just liquefying trace amounts of drugs and spraying down all of the houses that they like were in control of, but not actively storing anything illegal in or doing anything sketchy in, just to fuck with drug dogs.
Wow.
They would like put it in like bug sprayers or like those pesticide sprayer guys, and just hose the premises down with trace amounts of narcotics so that like if the police showed up to try and search, the dogs would just go apeshit because they could smell it everywhere.
That's pretty smart, actually. I'm gonna rub weed all over my car. I don't know. It's legal in Washington, so
I would just say make the car out of fucking cocaine.
just make it out of cocaine.
Because you know how there's always like, oh, there's cocaine in the tire. They're like, there's those videos always like on Twitter or Instagram, whatever. Like they're cut open the tire of the car and there's cocaine falling out of the tire. Like, wow, how do they do this? Well, the next step is the car is just literally made out of cocaine, and they would never guess it because like, how would you make a car out of cocaine? But then you get there and you just take the car apart, fucking, I don't know, blend that shit up, and now it's fucking cocaine again.
Fun fact, I never have drugs in my vehicles because I have 2 daily drivers and they both look like the person driving should be high.
You have 2 daily drivers? Oh, I see.
Two cars you use on the regular, yeah.
I have a 74 Ford Boogie van that is, I drive about 50% of the time, and a 67 Cutlass Supreme that like is all like metal flake vinyl, and like I haven't finished the interior, but like it's kind of wild.
Is it on bags?
What's up?
Is it on bags?
Nah.
Oh man, this is a fucking old Cutlass. That'd be kind of cool.
Well, it's an A body, dude. It's basically it's a Chevelle or a GTO. Like they were all the same body. They just had like different grills and stuff.
That's cool.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's one of my projects. I'm hoping to swap the transmission out in that next week. But like just the way I have everything done, I just look like I'm like. Yeah. And add that in my love for drinking and driving. Don't commit crimes while you're committing crimes.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Were you the one that recently, because I tried to listen to some of your guys' podcasts on the way here for about like 25 minutes. Like the very most recent one. And I remember it's like, you know what? Drinking and driving is fun, but you shouldn't do it. It was that you that was saying that?
Yeah.
As much fun it is to drink and drive, don't drink and drive. But
no
goddamn,
matter how much fun you're gonna have, even if you're taking safe precautions, don't drink and drive. You'll lose your license if you have a lot of fun drinking and driving everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Oh, you're like, it's only half a mile away from the bar to my house.
that was me.
Okay, I thought that was you.
Dude, a good friend of mine and next door neighbor is also my bartender, so I will just get blackout drunk for $4.
Oh my god.
Nice.
Sounds like the 90s.
Sounds like
Well, just no matter what I buy, she charges me for like if I'm leaving drunk, I'm probably getting charged for a High Life, and if I'm leaving like blacked out, I'm getting charged for a whiskey.
A Wild Turkey and a High Life.
Oh, that's literally what
Yeah.
they drink.
Oh yeah, Wild Turkey. I mean, that's the classic beer in a shot is a High Life and a Wild Turkey, right?
That is not the classic shot. That's my classic shot.
Oh, that's yours. Oh, is it Old
Yeah.
Crow or Old Crow and a High Life? I mean, that's what there's
I
like.
feel like everybody was PB. I feel like people are shifting away from PBR to High Life, but I don't know.
There was a bar in Tucson we used to. That's where we'd get blackout. It was $3 for a shot of was it Old Crow and a High Life. That was like that was the special. And
Yeah, that tracks.
yeah,
I'm fine with Old Crow. I appreciate any good bird whiskeys.
Yeah. I don't drink much like liquor anymore. I'll have a Johnny Walker Black occasionally because now I'm bougie, so I get my.
I just don't
my
like
mid-range.
that charred, man. I don't like that charred whiskey. I like a very light whiskey, like an Irish whiskey. Like I hate it's so fucking like cliche and like white girl, but what was
Like a
it?
Jameson?
McGregor's whiskey. I really like that one. You know what I'm talking about? It's like 21. God.
You're talking about a Scotch, like
No. It's a whiskey.
Hmm.
Here, I'll show you.
I don't know.
But
Scotch is whiskey. It's just Scotch whiskey.
Yeah. But if you're talking about like a not like a McFittich or what the fuck is it called?
well, like
Glenfiddich.
Jameson is an Irish whiskey. It's called
yeah.
Proper 12.
Proper 12.
I got the
Okay.
dyslexia. Got the 12 mixed up and it
Wow.
said 21.
I don't know. Never heard
Yeah.
of that.
No, dude, it's
Like I said, I don't drink a lot of whiskey anymore.
It's not that expensive. It's like $25-$30 at a your local Albertsons, Safeway, QFC, whatever the fuck you have, Kroger.
See, we're in Pennsylvania. We have weird liquor laws, and you can only buy liquor from state stores or bars.
Oh yeah.
State stores.
Yeah.
Which it's a
Well,
weird
Turkey is too,
system
I
that's not great, but it's also a weird system that's kind of great because I imagine it's probably a shitty job, but it's a shitty job that pays well and has good benefits.
Yeah, because it's a state job, it's like a government.
Yeah.
job. Yeah. I don't know. That sounds like communism to me. I don't know, bud.
Yeah, like my only objection to state stores is that there's not enough of them and they close at like 9.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think there's what is it like? It's either Turkey or Hungary. I can't remember that you can only buy cigarettes from a state dispensary or a state cigarette dispensary. I know there's a couple states in America that have like state. I think Maryland's maybe another one, or there's another one on the East Coast somewhere that's it's like a state liquor store. That's cool though.
Yeah, I've heard of it like in like I don't know, like Utah or something like that. We also have like weird beer laws. Like it's all fucky. But
Yeah.
when you got a bar that only charge you $4 or $5 for drinking all night, you really don't need to worry about it.
They don't give a fuck. But what was that? I think it was Utah. Was it Utah or something
Yeah.
like that? That where you can't you can only like buy alcohol to a certain point of time at night or a certain amount
Yeah.
or what was that?
Yeah,
That's so weird.
it's
Well, that Georgia was like that. You couldn't buy alcohol after a certain hour.
yeah, I
and,
think in
like,
Arizona, or at least in Pima County, Arizona.
I think they
you
did
couldn't buy
change it, but
beer.
Georgia used to not be able to buy beer on Sunday.
Yeah, that's in
What?
Arizona. In Arizona, it's like you couldn't buy it before noon on Sunday or before like 4 p.m.
Yeah.
on a Sunday or something like that. Back in the day, I don't know if that's still the case. I haven't lived in Arizona for a little while, but yeah, I remember it was because I rolled in at like 9 a.m. on a Sunday to buy like an 18-pack of Rolling Rock, and the guy was just like, "No." I was like, "What do you mean no? Give me my beer. Give me." Yeah, there's a bunch of weird rules. But yeah, I think Utah being like a heavily Mormon influence, they have some pretty strict.
Yeah,
liquor
that's
laws.
what I'm trying to
I
look
also don't
here.
think they have beer that's like above like 3.5% or something, or maybe
So
this is
Utah law restricts supermarkets operating within the state to only sell packaged beer up to 5%
Yeah.
or 4% alcohol by weight.
yeah, it's like basically a Coors or whatever, right? Like you can't have like a Ranger IPA or anything.
Beers containing alcohol greater than this amount can only be sold at state-controlled liquor
Yeah,
stores.
there it is.
And they increased it to 4.8% in 2019 instead of 4%. So basically,
Listen,
you
I'm
can
not
buy.
going to say that's good, but I will say about a month and a half ago, I drank a 6-pack of 13% beers, and maybe they're onto something.
Yeah, I was like, well, Lobotomy Bach was a beer we used to drink that was like 13-14%.
I had a
when we were
dark
kids.
beer that was 16%, but dude, it's a fucking
That's like
wine.
yeah.
That's a wine. I mean, even 13% is wine. Anything above like 9% is like I don't know if that's a beer anymore, man.
Yeah, I'll stick
It was
with
an
my
imperial
Coors.
stout, so I had
Yeah.
more than a few of them. Then had a bad night and a worse day next day.
Yeah, I imagine pretty awful next day. Yeah.
The strongest beer that I actually liked that didn't give me like the world's worst death hangover the next day would be like a Voodoo Ranger or the IPA.
Yeah, those
It's
are
like
good.
9%. Holy shit.
Those are good.
Dude, you drink 3 of those and you're fucking
I don't know. I hit 30. I just started drinking Rainier and Coors Lights. That's it, man. I just drink a lot of Rainier, a lot of Coors Banquet, Coors Light.
If we want to do some like behind the scenes stuff, I went to a weird like leftist comedy show with Nick from Intervention last night, and the one of the guys hosting it was just like, "What kind of comedy would you guys like to hear?" And I'm like, "Roast Nick,"
Snake.
and he just started going on. He's like, "This guy looks like he loves going to like brew pubs and shit and drinking IPAs," and it was
Just
just so
crying.
funny because that is Nick to a T.
He starts crying. Can you imagine he just starts crying?
No, dude, Nick is one of the best comrades. He can take any joke in stride, and dude, you get him shit hammered, and all he does is talk about how he wants to liberate people. Fucking such a comrade.
What is that joke? It's just like I'm not gonna talk about politics, and then just fucking
Yeah, just
starts talking
quoting
about
Mao,
communism.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
God.
ruined a wedding that way.
Really?
Yeah.
Sort of. I mean, I wouldn't say ruined it. I made it better.
Yeah. I'm great at parties when it comes to that stuff too. Yeah.
I was like 4 drinks in, and somebody's tried to talk to me about socialism, and I was like, I can't do this. This is Mike's wedding, and I'm not trying to fuck up his whole night. And Mike was right there, and he's like, no, I love it when you do this shit. Go to town. And I went full Stalin did nothing wrong for 2 hours.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah,
I've
you should
been there,
just
brother.
the way Stalin did things. You just took him around to the back of the bar.
Like for me, like that bottle, like that meme you're talking about, like the first
Yeah.
drink is like a nuanced analysis of Stalin, and then the rest of the bottle is did nothing wrong.
Singing the USSR anthem. Yeah. Yeah, good stuff.
I can imagine. I mean, I tried to not talk about politics. Like when I was younger, I really didn't. But when I got drunk, we just talk about like philosophies. Like, dude, is this even real? Blah blah blah. And now I'm like, dude, I'm scared to drink past 5 beers because it's just fucking commie comes out of me.
Yeah.
I'm just like, how can we allow this to happen?
Just drink with
Your
coffee.
mother doesn't have health care. You're working for like slavery wages.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. I'm like, oh god, no wonder I'm losing friends.
Yeah.
Dude, there's this music festival that I go to, and there's like a I don't know what you would call them. They're a gun club, but what that actually means is really like weird and nebulous. It's basically just a bunch of friends and they all have matching vests. But I was there and I got hammered with these dudes. Like we're all drunk on moonshine for 2 days straight. And somebody starts talking about like the pagans, like the motorcycle club. And I don't know how much y'all know about them, but they're just one of those groups that you do not fuck with. But I was hammered and I was like, fuck those fascist, racist pieces of shit, human garbage, fuck them. If you're friends with them, fuck you. Like I was 2 days into like a music festival on moonshine levels of drunk. And also I was on so many other drugs in that moment. Like, I'd been eating mushrooms on the hour, every hour for 12 hours. I'd taken some uppers, smoking weed, and I had been drinking for like 4 days. And I just went off on these motherfuckers. And the next day, I'm like, I am so glad they did not murder me.
Yeah.
And then the next year, it turns out that like they remembered me and they were like, no, we were agreeing with you and we weren't sure why you were so angry at us.
I don't know much about their politics. Are they actually like fascists? Or are they like cool?
The pagans are like, I don't know if they're like out and out neo-Nazis, but I mean,
Oh shit. Okay. Yeah.
but these dudes weren't pagans. They actually like pagans came up in the context of fuck those guys, but I was so hammered, all I hear is these like kind of sketchy looking dudes talking about pagans, and I'm like, fuck them and fuck you, and they're like, we agree with you, chill out.
We're with you, bud. Yeah, that reminds me by like I got married in this like kind of park in Phoenix, Arizona. It was like this like open park, and there was this river, and there was like a bridge, and it was just a nice spot. We got to
There's water in Phoenix.
Yeah, well, there's like this artificial river at a park.
Drink
Yeah.
it though.
What's it called? Camelback Park. Yeah. Anyway, it was a nice little, because it was during COVID too, so we had like a small COVID wedding outdoors, and it was just like a handful of our close friends. But there was like a party next to us, or like, you know, down the way in the park, and they were all like, it was a motorcycle club, and I forget the name of them, but we looked them up, and they're like, yeah, they're basically neo-Nazis. And we like, I was pretty proud of my wife. We had to like hold her back from like going and openly, like, 'cause my wife is like a queer woman of color, so it's just like, she was just like, fuck these people, I'll go fight them. And she's like also a 5'2", like, you know, very little person, and I was like, no, babe, you can't go fight this. Like, they called the Woodpeckers, I think. They were like,
The fuck names
I don't
the fucking
yeah,
woodpeckers,
they might have just
bro.
been local, but we looked them up, and like, yeah, they were like neo-Nazis or whatever. So we're like, it was just, I was very proud of my wife. She had to like, you know,
When are we
we had
gonna
to
make
hold her
our own
back.
fucking commie motorcycle club, bro?
Yeah, I don't know, man. There's a
The
cool-
comrades.
Hammer and cycle. Why did you miss that?
Wait,
Hammer-
yeah,
oh
that's
my
perfect.
God.
What? You've been sitting on that one. You've been sitting on that one.
Yeah, I've had that one for years.
Yeah, you had that as back pocket.
Let's do it. Why are we doing the back pocket thing? Put that shit like right out front of you
Yeah.
and try
Yeah,
to
fuck
take
the
glory.
pocket patch, baby.
Yeah, there you go.
I wrote a hammer and cycle patch. Hammer and cycle motorcycle club.
That's kind of cool. I'd get a motorcycle just to join.
I'd get another motorcycle just because.
I was in a communist WoW guild once. That was pretty cool.
Communist what?
WoW guild on World of Warcraft.
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah.
That is so much less cool than anything I thought you could have heard said.
No. It was like one of the classic servers. This is very specific to just something not very many people know about, but it was when the classic servers reopened. There was like different, like it was just straight up a communist guild. Like all the gold was redistributed, so everybody could get like their mounts and stuff. It was actually really fun. It was really cool, and it was like communism working, but in WoW. So there you go. Now I have proof that communism works because it worked in my WoW game. So there you go.
World of communism.
Yeah.
So it's not quite us vibing again because I don't really do video games, but I have nerd hobbies too. I Warhammer 40K.
Okay. Yeah, I play a lot of D&D. I can get down tabletop. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. I've always wanted to play Warhammer 40K, but
I've never even heard of it.
oh, it's cool. It's just the barrier to entry like cost is so insane.
Necromunda's the way to go. It's a much lower barrier of entry, and it's set in the same universe with different like guys. And
Yeah, I think
it's
some of my students were telling me about that because my students really wanted me to play Magic with them, and they really wanted me to play Warhammer with them, and I'm like, dude, I don't have the time, money, or energy to like invest in either one of those hobbies. I already have all this shit. Excuse me, I already have all this shit. I play D&D twice a week. You know, if what little free time I have, I'd rather just kind of unwind playing WoW. Like I don't have the space to take up more hobbies. And also like how much that costs. And they're like, well, they were kind of explaining like, oh, there's different ways you could do it. There's different decks you could do for Magic, and there's different like builds you can do in Warhammer that are like less expensive. And I was like, yeah, it's still not going to happen, bud. Sorry.
3D printers, baby.
Okay, yeah, that'll do it.
What can you actually print on those things?
Warhammer.
That's a resin printer, so I can print like miniatures pretty effectively.
Yo, you wanna? I don't know how much it would cost. We would send you some fucking money through Venmo or something. But we were trying to get like some kind of statue here of like
How big
Lenin
would it
or
be?
something.
We wanted to get a bust of Marx and like Lenin and Stalin and Mao. Oh, there's Lenin. Is there Lenin? Yeah, nice.
Oh,
My buddy
that's so
3D
cool.
printed me a Lenin statue.
Yeah, we were looking at like Etsy and stuff for like 3D printed busts, but it was like $200 for like a 6-inch bust. We're like, fuck that. Like,
Dude, you can go on eBay and find vintage, like actual like bronze busts of Stalin and Lenin and shit from the Soviet Union for that much.
yeah, he found
Yeah.
like a spear, like a flag spear, like from the
It's,
Soviet
no, it's
Union.
a spear point, and I was just thinking of we grab like a wooden
Yeah.
like a
Oh, it's
rolling
just a
pin
point.
or whatever
Okay.
the fuck,
Yeah,
and then like sand it down, put some fucking
yeah.
some stainer on it, and then like put the fucking USSR flag and just have it in the quarter, because like the spear point is sharp, and then it turns into a hammer and sickle on top, and I thought that was just the coolest thing.
That was
man.
pretty cool. But it was like $200, wasn't it?
No, it was like $40,
Was it 40?
$50.
Oh, shit. Okay.
But he wanted me to fucking what's money order, but like you have to go to the post office and like send
Oh.
like.
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy's must be like 75. I'm like, you don't got Venmo or Cash App? Like,
Wait, it was
How-
on eBay, and he wanted you to.
it was
first...
Craigslist.
Oh, it's Craigslist.
Craigslist.
And he wanted. Oh, it was local.
Yeah,
Oh
But
shit.
then-
Well, that.
but it was deep.
Cash.
So it,
Yeah. why would
but
you
it
want-
was deep enough where it'd be like a 3-hour drive for me.
Oh, it was like.
So I'm like,
solid.
I'd rather pay for shipping than spend $50 on gas. I'm like, I'd rather just spend $15 on shipping and just not even
Yeah.
have to worry about driving there, yet alone paying that much for shipping.
One of my weirdest rabbit holes that I love, I don't have a big collection of this sort of thing, but I love Soviet antiques because like you pretty much have to find them online because everything that I find is from like Belarus or Ukraine or somewhere in the former Eastern Bloc state or whatever. But some of their shit is so fucking cool. And I just want to get as much of it as I can to be like, look, Soviets lived normal goddamn fucking lives. Like, there was this, like, burnt orange, like, that typical, like, 60s and 70s color, like, portable record player that I wanted to buy, but it was, like, $70 to ship it. And, dude, there's just, like, my whole house is, like, mid-century modern sort of shit. And there's so much stuff that fits the vibe. Again, being a machinist, I have a bunch of old Soviet tools, and the only downside to them is they're all in the superior system of metric.
Right.
But like, yeah, I love fucking old Soviet shit.
Yeah, we have. I don't. Are you familiar with Lady Izdahar? She's like a
Yeah.
local kind of whatever historian /
National communist celebrity. Yes, I'm
Yeah.
familiar.
Okay. Well, now I don't know. We're in Seattle. I don't know how big she is.
She's
outside
big.
of Seattle.
She's really big here in Seattle.
Yeah.
She's
but
really
anyways,
big. If you're far enough left, you know who she
you
is.
know who Lady is. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
She has just such a cool collection of just all kinds of stuff. She did like a presentation for the CPUSA, and she like brought all these like cool posters and shit. It was just so badass. She has.
Yeah,
like,
we met her and filmed her, and like
Yeah.
I edited a video for her. We want to do another
we're
video.
working
her.
with her now on like a new secret project on Lenin because there's a Lenin statue in Seattle. If you're unfamiliar, there's like a giant Lenin statue in Seattle.
Yeah.
And we were going to do like a kind of a mini documentary about it, kind of the history of how it got here, because that was part of her presentation when she presented to us. Was like she briefly spoke about like the zany story of why there's a Lenin statue in the middle of Seattle. And so we were going to do like just kind of a longer form documentary about that, like partnering with her. And we're still trying to do it, but neither of us have the time to like fucking write this shit.
It was like pound for pound, it was a great fucking deal. But I found like it was probably a 20-foot tall statue of Lenin for sale on eBay from like I forget what country, but it was like $20,000.
Right.
That is so
So
cool.
so
though.
technically this statue is for sale.
no,
Like,
that's the
Oh,
statue.
shit.
Like,
yeah, no,
that's
well,
statue.
I guess
No,
like,
this one was
it might
in-
be.
This was still in somewhere in Eastern Europe.
Okay,
this
so
one
like,
is like 20 foot. That is like how high it is.
But this
I'm
one,
ballparking. I don't remember exactly, but
we were
it
gonna
was.
go
It
into
was
like
also
the
a
detail
different-
of it.
I know the statue you're talking about, and it was a different one.
Right.
Okay.
Well, that's what we were gonna kind of go into, like the history and like the provenance of this, because like it's unclear who owns it currently, and it's technically for sale, and like nobody really knows who owns it because the guy who bought it died, and then it's just been sitting there, and like technically no one owns it. It's just like weird, like it's basically just out on the street corner for anyone to grab, except it's a fucking like 20-ton statue.
You can't move that.
Yeah,
There's no-
it's a really bizarre story.
It's
It was a
crane.
guy from, I think he was from Belarus, and he was a restaurateur.
I think he was from Czech.
Doesn't matter. He's somewhere in like the Eastern Bloc, Central Europe, Eastern Europe, and he had bought it, and he had it commissioned there, and he was going to open. I thought it was. Oh, he's from it was Latvian, I think. He was Latvian, I don't know.
Being communists, bro, they fucking hate the
Whatever.
communists.
The point is he was opening a restaurant of whatever nationality that was here, and that was going to be out front of his restaurant. And so, but while he was constructing the restaurant and getting it, and he paid like fucking tons of money to have it shipped here. But in the interim, he died. He had like a heart attack and died. And he had like no heirs and no will or whatever. So like that's why it's technically like in limbo of like nobody really owns this statue. And like we were gonna go deeper and kind of like make this documentary about this weird fucking Lenin statue that's in the middle of Seattle, Washington, but we just kind of haven't had time to do it.
I just knew it existed, and I always did kind of wonder, like, because there's nowhere in America that is so progressive or lefty that you would expect to see that fucking statue there.
Well, that was her whole presentation was about Seattle's ties to the USSR. Like what was the
Goodwill
tagline?
Games.
Yeah, there's like Goodwill Games that they. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I got some pins from that.
Yeah, it was when in 1980, was it 86 or 88?
19.
There was a Moscow Seattle Olympic Games where like Ted Turner sponsored the Moscow Seattle Olympic Games, and so like it was this partnership between Seattle and Moscow in the 80s. Like Seattle is like super close to like the Soviet Union. We have a lot of ties to the Soviet Union. We have a sister city in what's now I think modern day Ukraine.
No, I think it's Kazakhstan
or is it Kazakhstan? Yeah, so we have a park in Seattle that's named after a city in Kazakhstan, and Kazakhstan has a Seattle park named after it. And so we had like a partnership. Like Seattle has like a lot of like ties to the USSR. And there's a lot of like commie friendly shit here.
This is not that, but it reminds me of it. Did you guys ever hear about the city in West Virginia that reached out to the Soviet Union to help them build a bridge?
Did they say yes?
Well, it was a stunt because it was some city. Their bridge was failing, and they couldn't get any federal money to help fix it. And after like the town struggled for however long they struggled for to get any sort of state or federal funding to fix this bridge, eventually they reached out to the Soviet Union. And I don't even know if the Soviet Union had time to reply before the federal government was like, oh, suddenly there's a lot less red tape and we have all the money you need to fix this shit.
What is that? That's the Truman or the Marshall Plan in action, like modern day Marshall Plan.
There was a pothole in front of my house and the city would not fix it. And people would swerve to miss it so badly that they hit my neighbor's cars and shit. Yeah. And my neighbor called the city several times and they would never fix it. And so then one day one of them spray painted a dick around it and it was patched up in 2 days.
Right.
So I don't know what the name for that is, but it's just like that.
Squeaky Will.
Put like a
the Squeaky Will syndrome.
Yeah. Let's make it into a hammer sickle somehow.
Bring back the USSR. That's what we need.
Oh, we don't need to bring back the USSR. We just need to make a new one.
Yeah. Same thing, I guess.
I mean, I do really feel like China is stepping up into the role. Like,
yeah, that larger role.
There's a huge conversation that we can have. I personally feel like China is doing socialism more correctly than the Soviet Union, even though I'm a huge advocate for the Soviet Union because, I mean, obviously the first ones to do it, we're not going to coincidentally be the ones to just nail it every step along the way.
Yeah,
but,
it's a process. It's a process where you keep rebuilding.
Yeah, they've been a lot better at preserving their state than the USSR was.
Well, I need to do more research before I lean into this argument super hard. But based on what I know, I'm a really big fan of Deng Xiaoping.
You dingus.
Yeah, hard. It's he took what we learned from the new economic plan that fucking Lenin himself did, and he ran with it because. I mean, anything that you can say about Russia's like rush towards industrialization, you can say about China just in just the same terms. So
yeah, I think I also need to like do a little more reading. From what I understand, I'm pro Deng, but like I don't have a huge backing or footing to kind of back that up on.
I'm not super knowledgeable on like Deng's economics.
Yeah.
Right. Like, because everybody is a big fan of Mao, but nobody talks about Deng. But even though when you could see the spike where Deng took over, you could see the spike where like China's like standard of living really went up and like they really progressed into a more modern sort of country. Yeah. And I'm sure that has a lot of things to do with how Mao certainly set things up, and things takes time to get there. You're not gonna have an overnight success story. But
the way I look at it very specifically is that Mao was an extraordinary theorist, an extraordinary revolutionary, but you can never expect one person to be a master of everything.
Right.
And I think that Mao could be a great leader, while Deng could also be a better economist, and perhaps like maybe he didn't have. I mean, I wouldn't even say he didn't have a grasp on like revolutionary theory, because Deng was Mao's like right hand man, or at least like very high ranking, and Mao trusted him, so like to decry him so quickly like kind of seems disingenuous. But yeah, I mean, I think that you can reasonably expect Mao to be a good post-revolution leader, but that doesn't mean he's the guy to pull them out of effectively the feudal era of China into modern industrial giant. And
like those are different skills. You can be a really charismatic revolutionary leader, but like city planning and bureaucracy may not be your strongest suit. And like there's that's okay that you're not good at everything, kind of what you mentioned.
I think that people love to romanticize the revolution aspect of communism so much that sometimes people kind of forget that there's also like a whole global communism building thing to be done. Like,
yeah, what's like once you won the war, now what kind of thing? Like now you actually have to like
Govern.
you have to govern, right? Like, and I think you're right. I think a lot of people over romanticize the revolution part and kind of forget the governing part of like, well, now you have a country.
If you romanticize revolution, you just end up in Vrahosha and you just keep building bunkers. Like,
I think the problem is like what as being a revolutionary, when you live in a country that has never been communist, you're always just fantasizing about having a revolution in the first place to get there. You never thought about that next step. So like it's kind of hard. I don't blame people about, being more revolutionary than a structuralist, like Deng. We haven't even got to the point of having a revolution. So I think like that first step of revolution is really what gets people triggered.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. Like I'm thinking about infrastructure and stuff. Like even now within the CPUSA, we just had this conversation about like the influx of members we got in 2020 and like how our onboarding process is not very streamlined. And like when Trump wins in 2024, we're going to see huge numbers again of people joining these Big 10 organizations. And our onboarding and new membership like protocols are not ready for it. And so I'm thinking like infrastructure and like we need to have these protocols in place. So I'm less excited for the revolution. I'm more excited like for what comes after. But that's just because I'm a nerd and I like planning. And I have three separate calendars, so
I could more quickly find 10 friends that would be willing to take up arms and do it than I could find 10 friends who could help me build a bridge.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm more
is
on that
hard.
second side. I agree. It is hard, but I'm one of the bridge people. I'm here for that.
Let's go, says Xi Jinping versus Modi. A boxing match. I got 10 on Modi. I got fucking my life savings on Xi Jinping.
I don't know anything about Modi's physical stamina. I know he's a fucking
I don't know anything about Xi Jinping's physical stamina. Dude's like pushing 70, isn't he?
Yeah, I think
Bro, he probably beat my ass.
He looks spry though.
I mean, so does Vladimir Putin.
Yes, but you would only describe someone as spry if they're 70 years old.
Fair enough. Yeah, you got me there. I don't know, but Modi, I think Modi's also like.
Yeah, I don't think he's a young guy.
Yeah, but I also like I think I've only ever seen him standing next to Trump. I think, and he's like
he's kind of small,
5 feet tall. Yeah, but
he's
I think Trump's also pretty tall. But one thing I did want to bring up was like the only bit of real news was the I forget her name, but it was that real estate mogul in Vietnam who was sentenced to death. I wanted to talk about that for a second.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have a different take on this because I was looking at.
I don't know anything about it, so
did you hear about this first of all?
I heard about it, and I heard that she stole 3% of Vietnam's annual GDP.
Yeah,
that's all I know.
She like embezzled or defrauded like Vietnam out of like billions of dollars, and now but so that's the headline everywhere, and all the commies around the world are like, hell yeah, hang this billionaire or whatever. However, there's actually a deeper level. Vietnam doesn't have the death penalty for any kind of like fraud cases. They have the death penalty for treason, and she's being convicted of treason alongside defrauding Vietnam.
What is treason?
Because they're claiming she's a Chinese spy, and like apparently it's confirmed she is a Chinese spy. That's why they're hanging, or that's why they're killing her, because she's a Chinese spy. The headlines are all very misleading, and like no one's really looking deeper than like the very surface level of this. She's getting the death penalty because she's a Chinese spy, and she's being charged for treason.
Aren't Vietnam and China somewhat on the terms?
Yeah. So that's where I was like, I don't know enough about the internal like politics of China and Vietnam. Like why? I'm surely China has spies everywhere. It's like that's not everyone has spies everywhere. That's not.
Yeah, that's pretty standard.
Yeah,
it's pretty standard. The spies might not mean anything of harm. It's just to keep track of what's going on in other countries. I understand that, but I mean, in my opinion, it is treason because she took advantage. Actually, no, you're right. You're right because she is a Chinese spy. It would, yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah, I don't know. There's
That
like
makes
there's
sense.
there's a lot more to the story than people are really talking about. I think.
Oh, I don't think you need to hang
You've
her.
had your finger up for a while there, but sorry.
This is like a semi-important thing we're talking about. I'm fairly sure that Vietnam and China are on pretty good terms, but they have a historically tense relationship.
Oh, 100%.
Like,
yes.
let's not forget that the last land war that China was involved in was invading Vietnam.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I need to read more about this, and it's also really hard to find information about this because it's a story about two communist countries from a Western perspective, so it's fucking almost impossible to find like accurate information about this. I was getting really frustrated reading. I was reading like AP articles. I read a Reuters article. I could not find anything that was like even coming close to like what the actual story was. Fuck, sometimes I want to be a journalist, and then I'm just like, dude, it would be fucking frustrating. So like,
who would hire you? You're a fucking Marxist.
I don't know. I feel like I could work for some Marxist rag, but the point is like, I don't know. I just want to be in Vietnam, like talking to Vietnamese officials, but then I don't speak Vietnamese, so it's a whole thing. I go down this rabbit hole of like, I could do that. I could do that better than anyone at the NT is doing it. I could do it better.
I think every good Marxist has that moment at times.
Wanting to
I
be just like
a journalist.
I could be a journalist.
I could do this.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's journalist and historian. Any good Marxist at some point thinks they could be either of those things.
Well, I am a
podcaster.
I'm a history teacher. Well, I have a history degree and I teach history. I don't know if that makes me a historian, but I am,
Well,
no, I think historian is like
a researcher.
The guys who are in the weeds digging up documents, like primary sources.
I want to do that. I've done research.
Again, good Marxist.
Yeah. But I'm just a history teacher. I teach ninth graders about.
I know I've mentioned it in the group, but I'm starting like a history podcast. Like as soon as I'm done, extensive research and outlining. Everyone in my purview is welcome. Because like one of you suggested that I like do stuff on CPUSA, and that's going to play a huge role in it because from what 1919 to the 50s, CPUSA was leftism in America. Like that, there weren't a lot of competitors.
It is the oldest. Like it was the first kind of after the 1917 split. That was kind of the American Communist Party, like the fraternal. It is the fraternal party to like Vietnamese and the Cuban and CC.
That's why earlier I said I have sort of nostalgia for it, even though that's not really the right word. It's just I would like to see, we have the CPC, there was this CPUSSR, like every fucking country was always the Communist Party of that country, and in America the fact that deviated, like it is what it is. But I would love it if CPUSA could be like a good cohesive party just for the sake of tradition,
Well, let me tell you, there's a huge movement internally in CPUSA that agrees with that and is trying to make that happen.
Yeah,
there's a lot of us younger guys that are really pushing to kind of be a little more radical, a little more revolutionary, definitely cutting ties with like the Democratic Party, hoping some of the older guys kind of like retire or we're willing to step down so that there can be this kind of like we can take it back as like that kind of like as the Communist Party of United States of America. So we'll see how that goes, but we're trying.
The best way to put it with CPUSA is there's really old people, there's really young people.
That's it. There's no between.
The old people are fucking liberals with social tendencies. The young people are revolutionaries, right? Old people.
Honestly, that tracks with me. Because leftism died in the U.S. in the late '80s, once the Soviet Union was gone, like America had no real left contingent. So I can only imagine that.
Yeah.
Any leftist, is effectively like from. They were a leftist, like a Marxist-Leninist when the Soviet Union still existed, and then there was nothing. And now people are like, oh, wait, communism might actually be our only way out of this shit.
This person named Let's Go said Sam Epperson would be a perfect journalist. I don't know who Sam Epperson
is.
Yeah.
Fuck Sam Epperson.
I don't know who that is. Yeah, I think these current the current leaders, they're the ones who watched the wall fall, and they like went into hiding in the 90s. And so I understand they're kind of like reservations and stuff, but like us younger guys don't have any such reservations. I'm 35 years old. I'm not like a young guy, but like
I typed in Sam Epperson and it came out as same person.
Oh, same person.
Is this a joke
is this
or
like some kind of troll?
It might be.
I mean, they know who Xi Jinping and Modi are, so like it's not one of my students.
Those are world leaders.
Yeah, I guess, but I mean, like my ninth graders wouldn't know who those people are, or at least
fair enough.
Put them together. I got to tell you, man, I don't have a whole lot of hope for the future. Sometimes I'm an optimist, but Jesus Christ, these ninth graders, man, it's rough out there.
I don't know.
I feel like everyone.
Go for it.
I was just saying, like all of my friends my age who are leftists were just doing a lot of drugs in ninth grade. So
I mean, I was too. I guess like there's hope. I'm just a boomer now. I'm that guy on the other side of it. Like, because I was like a burnout like stoner and just skateboarding in high school. Like I dropped out of high school and now I'm a high school teacher. So
I was straight edge until I was 28. I had my first time I ever did drugs, first time I drank anything like that was between 28 and 30.
I hung out with a lot of straight edge kids in high school. They listen to good hardcore music like Good Clean Fun and Bane and
I was a skater in high school
Yeah.
and middle school, so I was part of that crew.
Yeah, good stuff.
But,
Yeah, one of the Good Clean Fun dudes got canceled before getting canceled was even a thing, man.
Did he? That's a bummer.
Yeah, he was a creep. That sucks because they were funny as shit.
Yeah, I used to love going to Good Clean Fun shows. I have a Good Clean Fun hoodie somewhere actually. Fuck, I didn't hear about that. I guess I stopped listening to like that type of hardcore 20 years ago or 10 years ago. But
yeah, it was about 15 years ago that he got outed for creeping on young girls at the show. I think that was it.
That is like that's the meme.
That's the hardcore thing to do.
Meme,
though,
yeah. Is like the high school girls. Yeah, that's the cliche. I didn't know it was true.
Dude, I got dragged out one night here in town to emo karaoke.
Yeah.
And like in theory, it was cool. It was a live band. They would play the song, and somebody would come up on stage and sing. But the thing that fucked with me was it was all like 20-year-old girls and 40-year-old dudes, and I'm like, I am wildly uncomfortable here right now.
who the fuck is Sam Epperson?
Still in that rabbit hole.
Swear to God, it's the actually RCA member says this is a live recording for the podcast. Correct, my good sir. This is a live recording.
This is a live recording for the podcast. Hello, actually RCA member.
Yeah. So yeah.
You're forever memorialized on the Revolutionary Rhetoric podcast.
Bro, Sam Epperson, who is I swear to God, this is
I think
a troll.
you're being trolled.
I think they're trolled. They successfully trolled me. Congratulations.
Yeah.
I need more beer.
Yeah.
I've been trying to dry out a little bit lately, so
that's good. I don't actually drink all that much, but I've been on vacation. My school's on spring break this past week, so I have to go back on Monday. I have to go back to reality, but I have been living like a bum for the past 5-6 days, whatever.
I was in a relationship where there was nothing really wrong with either of us, but we weren't a good fit, and we were trying to make it work. And she was trying to dial back her drinking, so I was not drinking with her, but I was also getting shit hammered every night I didn't hang out with her. So now that the relationship's over, I'm trying to like normalize a little bit.
Yeah, I dated a girl like that years ago once, where I was like a really accomplished like cyclist. I don't know, accomplished is a strong word. I rode my bike a lot, but I did races and stuff, and I'd get up in the morning like at 4 a.m. or whatever, and I'd go for like 30, 40, 50 miles every morning, whatever. I was like I was in incredible shape, and I rode my bike like hundreds of miles a week. And then I met this girl, and we just started drinking just IPAs nonstop, like fucking just shit face blackout like every night. And I immediately gained like 30 pounds, and I like stopped riding my bike.
Yeah.
And I've like never really got that back, and I blame her. I blame you, Miranda.
You might be like the West Coast me.
Miranda.
I used to ride consistently 20 to 25 miles a day, and it was when I started drinking instead of cycling that I put on about 40, 50 pounds.
Yeah, man, it catches up to you fast. And now that I've been slamming tall boys all night, so like I haven't really changed, but I am getting back to it. I got my bike.
Bro, I used to be 100 pounds less. I used to be like literally a fucking gym rat.
Yeah.
But then what happened? COVID and 2 relationships later. Let me tell you, when you meet women, all they want to do is eat out with you. Oh my God. Yeah.
I really misheard that for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
They want that too.
Yeah, that's my favorite part, dog. What the hell?
Actually, RCA member, no, we have not started a Patreon yet. We still want to. I think what we were saying is we were going to do it at 100 subscribers.
Correct. We were going to do 100 subscribers, but I think
YouTube
interested. Is shadow banning us because we have like our videos. You get like 50 per episode every week, 50, 60, sometimes 45. And then last video was like 35, and this video was like 20.
Maybe people just don't like us anymore.
Yeah, maybe your content is degrading.
Yeah,
dude, my editing has become fucking pristine. I don't know what you want from me, but no.
Maybe you're over editing it. You ever thought of that?
No, I just over edited the very beginning to draw people. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But no, but here's my thought process. Most of our videos have like 8 to 10 likes. Our last video has 25 views, but 9 likes. Right, so that's like 1 in 3 people, and that's what that's telling me is it's only showing our video to our subscribers, and it's not sharing it anywhere else. So I'm concerned, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, if they are blocking us, well, I mean, YouTube isn't very friendly to leftist content. Period.
No,
but,
they're
like,
not. No, not at all.
My show has consistently had around 200 to 300 listeners per episode for like a couple of years now, and that would be great. But I want to say something like 30% of our listeners were outside of Langley, Virginia.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Do we have any? We looked. We're hitting all. We're at 6 out of.
What's there?
The CIA headquarters.
Oh,
CIA, FBI, all of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, isn't FBI in Quantico in Virginia? Or I think it's
That's not far away, bud.
They're not far away. Okay. Yeah,
it's all like in that general DC. Like all of our listeners are in Metro DC.
Yeah.
it's just all the congressmen. It's like, what's our next step? Hold up, let's go back to the to the Cars and Comrades podcast.
Yeah, actually, RCA, remember you missed it. We were talking about my WoW guild like not that long ago, man. Got to tune in earlier. It's relevant to the chat. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna look. We were looking at like who's listening to us. We have like a listener in South Africa. We were stoked on. We're like, if you're that person, email us. I'm gonna check to see if we have anything in like
on our audio podcast. It's fucking great. Like, but it's YouTube specifically.
Yeah, well, YouTube is like,
I mean,
they're not very friendly to left wings.
I mean, and also like Instagram. I don't know what the fuck just happened. Like it happened out of nowhere. Because we've been doing like 3,000 views at short, 4,000 views, 2,000 views, and suddenly it's like 250. Our last ones have been 90 and like 35. So they're not sharing it. So I don't know what the fuck we said to get shadow banned, but we'll see how long they shadow ban us for.
There was that like update where now you have to like turn on political content or whatever.
Oh, that's definitely what it was.
Correct.
Yeah,
it's part of it, but we were still getting like 2,000-3,000 views a short.
I don't know. I had to go
even
change
with that.
mine. That was annoying. Lebanon, Ohio. I love that. We got a lot of Amsterdam and Holland listeners.
That is
Dutch
Comedy Central.
listeners. Oh, that's Comedy Central
Yeah.
and their people. Okay, cool. Shout out to Comedy Central.
I don't know if Comedy Central's in Amsterdam, but I know he's from the Netherlands.
He's Dutch, yeah.
Yeah, we got to get that guy on, man. That guy's a badass.
He wants to come on, but right now it's 3. It's like 4 a.m. right now.
Oh yeah.
The time difference is kind of fucked.
Server first Oni.
Yeah,
here.
it's a boss annexed. It's a dragon. Let's kill here. That's their family sort. Okay, yeah. I don't want to devolve this into WoW, but yeah, it was a communist. I was in a communist guild when Classic WoW first launched. I was never that hardcore of a player though.
Blackpool in England. I don't know. It's random, like fucking Turin.
Yeah. I'm not finding any in around Virginia. I guess we're not on their radar yet. That's a bummer.
I don't know anything about WoW really, so like if it was just an all communist party like thing, was it just like an entire group of librarians or what?
No, I don't know if anybody so here's the thing: is it was like a role playing server, so I don't know if any of the people besides me were actual communists, like in real life. But like the guild was structured in such a way that it was like redistribution, like everybody pitched in for like every kind of. So like I don't want to get too in the weeds in this, but like Classic WoW, you have to like buy. I think my dogs are inside, man.
Are they?
Yeah, I think so. Well, anyway, you had to like buy gold is hard to come by and like it's expensive, and so we had a means of redistribution where like every week people got dividends paid back of like the gold collected like dues basically, or the guild collected dues, and then that was spread among people based on like how much they needed toward their next purchase. So it was kind of based on like need. So it was like 2 each. According to yeah, it was that principle, and like it was just a cool system of doing things. It didn't last very long, but it was a lot of fun because like I don't know if the people were actually communists. I assume like. Some of them had to have been because I don't really remember like talking politics really much with those guys. At least like I don't really remember. This was also 5 years ago now when Classic first launched. I forgot, but like it was just mostly just for the lulz, just goofing around. And,
sounds
like,
fucking rad.
It was.
Dude, there was I'm not really a gamer, but I heard about it, and like a couple of other people that I knew like played it. There was some game that came out a couple of years ago, maybe even just last year, but it was like some like world builder, like SimCity. I don't know what that kind of gameplay is called, but like there was the option of like playing a capitalist economy or a socialist economy, and apparently like if you played communist, it was just like massively overpowered because like workers had so much more buying power that it boosted the economy like crazy in the game.
Pretty great.
I mean,
take the fucking hit.
That's about right. God damn it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because like the whole classical, like the whole problem, like the paradox of capitalism is like to make as much profit as possible, you have to lower your expenses, and the number one expense is labor. But if you lower everybody's wages, nobody has buying power to buy what you're selling, and hence you're just fucking yourself over. So it totally makes sense that if like everybody had large amounts of buying power, your economy would flourish. Even in a video game. And I feel like a video game itself seems like, because it's just computers and coding, it's kind of scientific in a way.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's actually
that would make an argument that like algorithms are also like, maybe unbiased, and
yeah, we know
there's definitely ways to make it work for or against, but
well, there's a really classic example of like this really classic anecdote of WoW where they like again, I don't like talking about WoW so much. I'm outing myself as a fucking nerd, but it was like, I forget the details, but it was a classic. It was a long time ago. There was like this debuff you got placed on you. It was like a blood thing where it killed you. It dealt like bleed damage over time. It was like a plague. It was like a disease you got. But it was transferable. It was communicable to other players. So if you came in the vicinity of another player, you would transfer it to them, and so it would wipe like lower level players who didn't have a health pool to like really sustain that amount of damage. They would just be killed instantly. And so like it like through a glitch and through a bug that the developers didn't plan for, the disease was able to leave the raid, and so like it actually infected all the major cities in World of Warcraft, and like actually spread like wildfire throughout everything, and like there would just like be graveyards, and they had to like shut down all the servers, and it became this whole fucking thing. Well, like the CDC took note, and then they started using like, they realized that this was early on. This was like 2005 or 2006, that like you could use WoW or other games like it as a model for like real world pandemics, and like because you could track communication through diseases and stuff. So that was just this cool like actual anecdote of how like this bug essentially in WoW led like research just like to recognize how like communicable diseases can travel in major cities, and like because like WoW is incredibly complicated with like flight paths to like multiple major cities across different factions. So like it's just like over time, over the course of like a couple of days, it like spread. But
I'm just imagining like a bunch of CDC researchers just playing World of Warcraft for like weeks and just coming out of like some fucking hobbit hole and being like, actually, we've decided it's okay if you go back to work.
Yeah, there's no valuable resource that can be made from this, but we had a good time. Yeah, it's the blood plague from Hakar from Solgrub. Yeah, so
they're coming out of like the den, and they're just like, they took off their headphones. They're just like, Eureka, we have found it out. We have the answer.
We have the answer.
After 45 consecutive days of World of Warcraft, we have found the answer.
The answer is go back to work.
Yes. Work, you fucking peasants.
Well, you gotta pee, and it's 9:20 here. I can't imagine what time it is there. Probably midnight 20. I don't know.
You don't even have to imagine. Time zones are really simple math.
So yeah, I guess probably it's either 2 or 3 hours. Well, I have to learn how daylight savings time work, or I had to. I'd never done that before in Arizona, and then I moved. Arizona doesn't. We didn't talk about this. Arizona doesn't recognize daylight savings time, so I had to learn how that shit works when I came here, and like. I get that it's simple. You just move like your phone does it for you, so you don't actually have to do shit. But like, it still fucks with me.
I just don't believe in it. I mean, it's not that I don't believe it. It obviously like it's made up regardless.
Yeah.
But it's just like, what's the point? I think it's such a waste of time. Just let it roll.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we should abolish it, but I don't make those decisions.
Abolish a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, do we want to call it here? I know we didn't really talk about much politics. We just kind of shot the shit all night, but that's pretty fun.
We talked about a lot of things. We don't have to talk about current news events. We talked about a lot of
Yeah.
It's important to remember that being a communist does mean political stuff, but you're also still just a normal person who has a life and does stuff.
Yeah,
we're just people.
Yeah.
We talked about a lot of things.
We did. It was
events,
fun. Yeah. I had a great time. I'm not saying. Hey, listen, I'm not saying I had a bad time.
Well, this is the longest show that we've had ever. So
yes, 2 hours. Jesus, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
so that's why my wife is probably wanting to hang out. Is Sam Epperson?
We're hoping to have. We're hoping to have a monthly live first Friday of every month or something like that.
Yeah,
and just get like a round table of 4 or 5 people in.
Literally what you guys already do. Fuck it, we'll do it live. We want to do that, but
I mean,
more conversational, just chatting, drinking.
I'm sure they've done a few without me, but I mean, we haven't really been on top of doing those lately, anyway.
This is how fucking autistic we've been about this recently. We will not let go a week. We're like, oh, can we do it? It's like this guy has this whole week planned out for his anniversary, right? But we're like, hey, we get slided in Friday night.
Slide in Friday night. Well, that's another reason I want to dip, because my wife's upstairs. Yeah. So she's like, when are you gonna be done soon? And I'm like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna go hang out with my wife. Not that I don't like you guys, but I like her a little more. So,
We just met, so
yeah,
I'm kind of hurt. You get to
I
hang out
love-
with your
I
wife
love
all
you,
the
bro.
time, and this is
dude. So now there's a new person in the chat called not actually RCA member. Is Sam Everson the same person? And then now, okay, I don't understand. I have to assume one of these is my students because they fucking follow me everywhere I go. And they're all aware of my podcast, which is actually a problem for me, maybe.
yeah. I was actually maybe it's because you live in Seattle, but I would assume being a teacher, like you're in a public school, I presume.
Yeah. I mean, I have this flag hanging in the USSR flag hanging in my room, and like I'm openly. I wear a CPUSA and a Palestine pin on my backpack and stuff. Like nobody gives a shit. I don't think anymore. But
Yeah,
I'm
going to say that might strongly be because you live in Seattle.
Yeah, it's 100% the school I work in is an incredibly progressive school. Like they're all
okay.
They're all a bunch of liberals, but they're all like pretty progressive liberals. So
Also,
I heard if you scratch them, a fascist will bleed.
yeah, I don't know about my principal. He's a pretty nice guy, but I don't know. When the chips are down, you never know. I guess.
I'm not one of your students. I'm a New Yorker. Okay, fair enough.
No, I'm not talking about actually RCA member. I'm talking.
But what about
other,
not actually?
Yeah,
RCA?
I'm talking about because I think that's Let's Go. I think it's
yeah.
that person.
Listen, if there are any students in this, any of his students in this chat or futurely watching this video, dude, don't get this guy fired, okay? Like, keep it on the low.
And
right?
also, if you are listening, I will grade your final products from last week. I promise. I was supposed to do that this week, and I have so much fucking essays to grade. I'll get to it. Yeah, they did a bunch of presentations about like environmentally sustainable cities because we looked at like urbanization and
I'm
like
not even American.
classical like oh, fair enough. All right, cool.
I don't even know what's going on.
I
That might not be true. Who
Yeah,
knows, bro?
if I could say like a 30-second like blurb about my podcast, is the funniest thing about it, like in terms of you mentioning sustainable cities, is I think we're like a year or two into doing it before we were all just like, fuck, cars are the whole problem.
He said he is a Fed.
Oh well,
I'm gonna ignore.
This is honest.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna talk to you, man. I'm gonna ignore chat.
Yeah,
If you want, because this is actually going to go live as a podcast, can you tell the people where they can find you? Give us a plug for Cars and Comrades and anything else you got going on.
Oh yeah, we're Cars and Comrades at most, whatever. So I don't do any of our social media stuff. I'm not great at social media, but it's Cars and Comrades most places. You can find us on Spotify or wherever you get podcasts. I don't even know. We have a Hexbear account. I don't even know what the fuck that is, but
I don't know what that is.
I think it's on Google Podcasts. I think I saw that on your guys' page.
Okay.
Yeah. We're normal podcast
we'll
bullshit.
Add your links to our whatever, our description. We'll have your links in there too.
Yeah, and if you fuck with cars and leftism, then we just discuss whatever. A lot of labor stuff, car stuff, whatever. We're pretty across the board within our small little niche. But
awesome.
Hopefully next time I'm on, I'll have another show to plug because I'm really wanting to get that off the ground.
I'm curious to hear more about that, or like I want to listen to that. So keep us posted about what you're going with that.
I'm tentatively going to be calling it Red Channels after the anti-communist Hollywood magazine from the HUAC era.
Oh, I'm not familiar with the magazine, but okay.
It was like a trade publication, I think, but it was just meant to out communists in Hollywood.
Well, I'd reckon if you want to watch like a Hollywood version of it with Bryan Cranston, watch Trumbo. It's about those the screenwriters in particular and like how they kind of got around. It's a CPUSA history. It's as far as I understand, it's pretty accurate to like the actual events of like the timeline.
I would definitely check that out. Also, Left of the Projector, Evan.
Yeah, I know, Mike. I really want to talk to Evan. I reached out to Evan and like asked him because like I'm a huge movie guy and like I wanted to go see Civil War today. I didn't actually gonna do that. I'm probably gonna go see it tomorrow. But I wanted to talk to Evan. Yeah, believe me, I'm in contact with Evan.
All that is to say, like there's once I'm doing something that is more oriented towards like U.S. history, then a lot of movies I think are going to fall into the mix just because that makes a lot more sense. Like I think there's been like one or two movies that would have made sense for us to watch that were an intersection of like leftism and cars. We've talked about as a joke doing like episodes on like Fast and Furious and trying to do like a dialectical analysis of Fast and Furious and shit.
I'm trying to think back of the first
It's the most common shit I've ever heard.
Because the first one they're about like heists and they're all poor, so I imagine there's probably some like
Yeah, but by like
there's
7,
some
they're just
nasty,
using
right?
magnets to rip like
Sure,
vaults out
yeah.
of banks and shit.
Yeah, like 6,
I've
7, 8,
seen-
9, notwithstanding. But like, I imagine the originals
Like
are
the first 4 maybe.
because I think the originals talk about like police and like race relations and like I feel like they had something to say back then. I don't think they do anymore, but I haven't watched them in a while. But I feel like the originals.
Okay, I wouldn't say they had something to say. I would say that anyone of our ilk would have something to say about it because
fair enough, yeah.
because obviously like they don't have to have any sort of political leanings or message for you to look at it and be like, well, it's obviously there because our society's built upon it, but they weren't commenting on it.
We can overanalyze anything, and so we can take from stuff from it.
Have you guys ever heard of Revolutionary Communists of America?
Yeah, they're a Maoist party, aren't they?
Is that what RCA is?
And well, that's just what they're asking if it popped up on our radars yet.
No, I don't.
I've
never heard of them. Maybe that's a huge.
I thought it was revolutionary. I'm thinking of Revolutionary Communist Party. I don't think
maybe
it was
I don't know.
Communists of America. I don't know. Is this a new party? If this is a huge gap in my knowledge, then feel free to inform me. I'm not familiar.
What I'm thinking of is I think a Maoist party.
Okay, I don't hate.
I'm
like
down
Maoist,
with I'm down with Maoist 7 party here too.
I'm down with Maoism in theory. Every Maoist I meet is a lunatic.
they're just so hardcore, you know. Yeah.
They are very hardcore.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess
have you read any Chairman Gonzalo? And I'm like, I need you to leave the room.
I need you to fuck away. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Like, I'm sorry, they admitted they boiled babies. You've lost all of your footing.
You've lost the plot a little bit. Yeah. That's what they would call the ultra. Remember the ultra leftists?
The ultra leftist.
God. Yeah.
What was his fucking face?
Well, yeah, I don't say his name, but it's just This doesn't matter. I don't want to get into CPUSA drama. That's the point. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on, Brandon. I know we really appreciate you.
Don't forget.
Thanks for having me. It was super nice to meet you guys. I had fun.
It was awesome. I know so anytime if it sounds like we're just joining 2 different people in the Instagram, it's because there are both of us running that same account.
I'll send a message and then he'll reply to the next person.
Yeah. We have no communication. It's actually a terrible system.
That whole thread is like 15 different people just screaming into a void. So you can be
I love that chat
and no one will notice.
I'm so glad Mike added us to that chat because I was just like the first day I was like, hey, I know all these guys. I'm big fans of all these guys. So I was fanboying out the first day, and by the second day I was just like, what the fuck? Just reading these messages like, what is happening?
Thank God you missed the first one where we found actual feds.
They said not Maoist, evolution from the IMT.
Oh, those are trots, aren't they? IMT is trots.
Oh God.
Maybe it's a branch off. Listen, I'm not going to hate on anybody. I have hated on trots in the past, and like I'm not a big fan of Trotskyists, but
hey man,
I'm not going to generalize.
I'll be a friend of trots.
I will if it's about trots.
Fair enough. I will if it's trot. Sorry.
Yeah, the only good trot's a Posadist.
There's just like if this guy's a trot in our chat, I don't want to like totally like call him out.
No. Hey, listen, better a trot than a liberal, so I'll take that.
What's the difference? So one of our working titles for our podcast before we got it off the ground was 10,000 revolutions per minute. But then they were like, no, that's going to make us sound Trotskyist.
Ooh, yeah, a global. Well,
guys, don't forget to subscribe if you're watching this, and also in the future, don't forget to subscribe as you're reviewing this video.
Yeah, we need to put that tagline at the beginning because we forgot to say anything about that at the beginning. So,
well, do you want me to edit this?
No. You already have that little plate, that little
but
future...
this is live.
Well, oh fuck yeah.
It did seem like we sort of accidentally started the show.
We are not good at this yet. All right,
that's the best part.
We wandered into recording.
Yeah.
Please follow Cars and Comrades.
Yeah, follow Cars and Comrades. We'll have your link, like I said, on the audio version. I'll edit the audio version.
I can edit. I can put things in afterwards. So I can put stuff in. I can put stuff in the info afterwards for people that are going to watch this in the future.
All right.
So we are all communists.
We are.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, thanks again, man. I know we've been dragging this out forever, but I really, really appreciate you stepping up. I know we just kind of messaged the void and said, hey, this is the last minute, but anybody wants to come on, so we really appreciate that. We're hoping to do this, like Kenan said, kind of the first Friday every month, or I think this is actually the second Friday of the month, but like something like that of just kind of once a month doing these more casual hangout drinks and just chatting.
Hey, I'll be around when I can be.
All right. Well, appreciate you, man. Have a great night. Thanks for stopping by.
Have a good night. Cheers.
Bye. And everybody watching, have a great night. Take it easy.